Hey,
Hey.
wow, it's so beautiful there.
You're on the West Coast too, right?
Yeah, but I'm in like a dark man cave.
Oh.
So we've already
Nice.
covered mermaids and the moon maybe being hollow.
Yeah, they
Um,
missed all the good parts already.
yeah, what do you think about mermaids?
I think that they're real. I don't think they're as beautiful as we've been told.
That's
I'm
literally what
afraid,
I just said. I said I think there's probably something like that out there, but I don't think they're very humanoid.
or I think like, yeah, I think they look really creepy and scary.
I
Um,
stumbled around it, but I said monster.
Monster. Let
I'm
me
like, I
see.
think it probably looks more like a monster.
It is, and of course the skin is all gross
I'm so
because it lives underwater.
I'm so used to trying to look at the camera that I'm like looking at the camera and then trying to make sure I see all the comments. How do we get past the Kuiper belt? I don't know about the Kuiper belt, but the radiation belt's the problem. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the moon in general.
The moon.
Mermaids
Well,
are not feasible.
we only see our own followers' comments, is what I've realized in these lives.
Oh,
So, yeah,
I
you'll
just
probably
assumed
have a
all
little
of my
bit more
followers follow you.
you'll probably have some more skeptics on your side than on mine.
Yeah. Yeah. So mermaids are not feasible. I'd like to hear more about that because I think we probably just have no idea.
How are they not feasible by our standards? Someone on my side is saying mermaids are more like fish than humans.
Someone on my side just said dolphins and whales don't have gross skin. And that's
Don't have
true,
gross
but
skin?
they don't have gross skin, but aren't those mammals like technically?
Yeah. And how do we know that a mermaid is a mammal?
I've been out of school way too long and that felt like a real shot in the dark for me to say out loud, so
Okay,
someone
so
just
the moon, what do
go
you
ahead.
think about the moon?
I don't know. I mean, I go back and forth on the idea of us going to space. Like, I want that to be true so bad because I'm so worried about Earth. And I'm like, I think people are like, why would they lie? And this is why they would lie. Because
Why
people
would
like
they
me,
lie? Oh my God, we
there's a
need to
lot
go
of
over
reasons.
Conspiracy 101. Why
I
would they
know,
lie? There's a million reasons.
but for me, it's like people like me go, okay, well, the Earth is screwed. It's going away, but at least we have space and we have other planets. So we'll give these people a bunch of money so we can go to space someday. And we won't try as hard to protect our like little space rock. So I really want to believe that that's possible, but I think that I think the moon landing story and the footage is just like ridiculous.
The footage I definitely think is fake. Some people are asking if this is going to be on YouTube. Yes, I'm going to put it on mine. And then, Max, I think you're going to put it on yours too, right?
On my YouTube.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah, people are asking if it's going to be on YouTube. I'm going to upload it to mine. And I think Max will upload it to his too.
Yeah, I will definitely.
As far as the moon, the footage is absolutely fake.
Yeah,
The moon is
that
real.
little that
It's
tent,
just
that foil tent. That's not a spaceship.
exactly, and the wind and all of it. And but the moon is real. It's just not a moon.
Right.
It's not a natural moon. It's a fake moon, basically. But it still serves some purpose. It still is, affecting the tides and all of that. Some people are saying hollow moon theory. I think that's kind of what it's called, but they say that there's basically that the moon was a satellite that was basically towed here to send energy from Saturn to Earth.
Because like top scientists will tell you that it is an absolute miracle where the moon is in proximity to Earth and how rare that is in the universe. So that kind of goes along with it. Like it doesn't really make sense why it's right there and how
Or why
much it
it's
has to do.
perfectly
That's why it's right there, and how
Or
much
why
it
it's
has to do.
perfectly round.
That we are getting hit with space shit, and our moon is just perfectly round.
That's another one of those things that you hear in like NASA videos and stuff. They're like, this teeny tiny piece of space sand could like eviscerate 10 layers of steel if it collided with it because it's moving so fast. But then you see the footage of the moon landing, and it's like, well, what is that made out of?
And
Like,
have you heard about this thing that basically when they were on the moon, that Neil Armstrong switched to the medical channel and said, they're here, they're on the edge of the crater and they're watching us. And he's basically referring to like some beings that were on the moon watching them during the landing.
yeah, so I don't have as good of a filing system in my brain as you do. That's one of the things I love about you, is you just like right off the top of your head. But so my brain works like this. Didn't one of the astronauts say something about aliens once, like while they were on the moon? So yeah, I remember hearing about that. I just the other day like stumbled across this video of like how they got the shot of Earth. And you can see like when they pull the camera back a little bit in the reflection, you can see that it's basically like they're really close, and the Earth is like extremely bright and huge, and they had like put something up, or they had the camera right up to the porthole to make it look like it was super far away. And they were talking about it, and you were never supposed to see the reflection. You're never supposed to hear the radio conversation. It was supposed to be muted. That's out there too. So they really
Wow.
like need to get a handle on those communications.
I mean, I feel like we're getting to a point where it's kind of like, how could they hide it anymore? And I'm sorry, you guys probably hear this dog. It's not my dog. It's just a menace dog that lives near me who never stops. Anytime I'm doing anything,
Just wants to be heard.
he does. And we hear him. We do. We hear him every single day of our lives.
Someone over here said, Orchimedes said, it's more realistic that we went to the moon but encountered aliens. So as opposed to never going to the I'm not sure what that means.
So I personally believe that we have gone. I think that the footage is fake. Yeah, so I do believe that we've gone to the moon.
So would they have faked the footage
because we also left, there's like this thing where we left like something crazy, like 400,000 pounds of human feces on the moon and a bunch of other garbage. Like we left so much trash and garbage because we are garbage people. So
we're
we
so
left
nasty.
we literally left it on the moon. So why would anyone add that part to the fake moon story? Is that disgusting humans left our bags of shit there? Like
I mean, if it was my job, like, you just got to put out a little bit of disinformation every once in a while to make it more believable. That kind of explains why there's.
I feel like that's the most believable part, though. Is
Yeah,
that we would leave trash
that we're
behind.
trashy.
All the other stuff is kind of like not that believable, but the fact that like just littered on the moon, that's very accurate sounding.
Someone said they had to scrub the footage so we could just see a blank horizon. I also think it's like really strange how space is pitch black in the old footage, and then there's stars all over now.
Well, I think that's probably just because, you know, of the cameras, right? The light sensitivity and everything. Someone is asking, do you make good income doing this? No, not a penny. Yeah.
Try it.
No.
I'll just say, like, it was pretty shocking. I had that one video go super viral, and like I looked up how much you made on TikTok, and my heart sank, but I was like, okay. And they don't tell you exactly how much you're gonna make. They give you like a range. And like 8 million views later, I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to figure out how to make money around this if I'm ever gonna do it at like a bigger level. So I think we're both working on that. But no, you make a pittance. I'll say that. You make way, way, way less than minimum wage.
Yeah. And I don't have any monetization on my videos because I have so many violations and
Which
it's
is,
not worth it.
it's strange to me. Is it because you're so much smarter than I am? Because mine is like,
Is it because I'm a woman? No.
yeah, that's it. I mean, we talked about this in private, but I need so much prep time to go over a subject because for me, it's like, this awareness that something's not right. And that radar just starts pinging for almost every day now for the last couple of years. But you have this like technical knowledge of all the different histories and all the
I don't know
psyops.
how I've always been that way. Like so many people have said that like I'm kind of like a zip file, that I like kind of have like a lot of information condensed, and when I start like thinking about it, it's like I can extract
Yeah.
all the information I've ever come across on that topic.
So
Someone's asking, what am I
Archimedes.
drinking? I'm drinking kombucha.
Mm. Archimedes sent another comment. He said the Soviets and Americans low-key were showing off how far their ICBMs could go. And I think that's really interesting because if we did just fake it, that would definitely be why, like, historically, we needed to, like, win the culture war. We needed to win, like, the war of public opinion versus communism. That was the idea at that time, whether we went or not. So that would make sense to me.
I feel like a lot of this like narrative between America and Russia is obviously you know, part
It's,
of the theater
yeah.
of the world that we live in, because when you really look into especially space stuff and alien stuff, it seems like they were communicating about that stuff throughout the whole time, that no matter what was happening publicly, that the two countries were communicating about what they were doing, being in contact with beings. So when you look at that type of stuff, they had open dialogue. So I really wonder if it was as much of a race as we like space race as we were told.
Yeah, and the world governments have to agree on a lot of things that are outside of our like knowledge, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's so much we don't know about. I tell people all the time, like kind of when I don't feel like going into it, and someone's like in person, kind of like, well, what about this? And I'm just like, it's more bizarre than I can. We wouldn't know it if we were staring at it. It's something is so weird, like what actually is going on. So Russia, China, the U.S., UK, they all agree on a narrative before anything happens, and that's starting to bleed out. I just watched it's so random, the prequel to the Kingsman series, and it's just showing like all the cousins or whatever that started World War I. It's just like showing them me, and I know like we've known this historically, but it's just out there now in the public, in movies. Like, yeah, they plan the wars. It's just
Yeah.
planned. They just decide when to do it.
Well, you know, they kind of have to tell us what they're doing.
Yeah.
Some people are asking about the bad aliens that are influencing Earth. I would like to know your take on this because you did do some videos and stuff on Grays before I did. And so I'm interested in what you think
That's
about the
right.
bad.
And you copied me, and that's actually why I wanted to do this live. I'm just kidding.
Yes, because
So
you wanted to confront me about it.
I think the Greys are interesting, and I think that story is really interesting. Um, but to be frank, I think that story, the Kentucky stuff, like it's very possible that it's Greys, but also there's just a lot of weird stuff that happens in that area and in forested areas in general. But the bad aliens, my fear is more parasitic and infectious than physical, I guess, like than like a humanoid thing. I am a little more conscious and fearful of like a smart parasite AI or something like that. Like it seems so spread out and so like world encompassing, and kind of one of my ideas where that comes from is I've been learning more about the mycelium layer that covers Earth, and it really is kind of just proving that like Earth has a brain, because mycelium is like it's the largest living life form on Earth, and it's kind of seeming like Gaia, like our mother, is alive. And you know, like you're so specific, you know where you heard things, but I've been hearing this idea of black goo, and I know it's not really something
I've
that,
heard of the black
yeah,
goo. I haven't dug
like
into that.
it is heavily censored, but
Yeah, I know
it
my friend posted about it and the video got taken down.
yeah. So I try not to like say those words in conjunction together too much, but yeah, it's just
And you
I
would think like a word like black goo, how could it be censored? It's like literally what happens when you like clean the drain.
yeah. But it's also like everywhere in like movies and comic books and stuff. So I don't know, it might just be an idea like that, but I don't disbelieve. I don't believe that any more than I like believe anything else. All I know is that I don't know anything, and that people in general don't know as much as they think they do. But I want to. I don't know. Is it gonna spoiler alert your current series if you go into your idea of the bad guys?
Oh, no, it won't. I'm definitely seeing how to navigate that just because that is one of those
Because
topics. The
you
negative
can't say
alien.
the word that you're trying to say or can't say is much worse than black goo as far as censorship goes, right?
Reptilian.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know when one of my videos the YouTube, like, you know, on YouTube they add the little like Wikipedia citation.
That
I've already
drives me
got one of those
insane.
for I've already got one of those for Reptilian. So
Every time I
no,
see
that
that,
is where I'm going with the series and with negative aliens. Now, obviously, I don't think they're all negative, aliens in general or reptilians. And I think obviously some grays are negative too. And there's also Pleiadians that were negative. Basically every alien species has both.
can you imagine trying to convince an alien species that all humans were good or evil?
I know. And they would probably have a pretty good idea of that most of us are bad. You
Yeah.
know?
The black goo is just like octopuses. I think it might be octopi, but they are not from this planet. I love that.
I've actually heard on Cosmic Disclosure, the guy Tim that I reference a lot in some of my videos, he was asked if there was any species that are not from Earth that are basically like pure alien species that are here, and he said octopus.
Giraffe.
Octopi is what you said.
Yeah.
Octopi.
And
And you
probably
could
giraffes
tell,
too.
of
I
course,
don't think giraffes make sense.
Oh, you guys are so nice in these comments.
I'm not getting any nice ones. They're all really mean. They're all about you. I'm just kidding. Someone said, give it a slee stack name. That's funny because in a lot of like the artist renditions and stuff, that's what they look like.
Wow.
So yeah, tell me about that. So in your mind or like through your research, because like I don't want to say anything that you've told me, but do you think that it is like a physical, like flesh and blood thing? Because a lot of people have the idea that it is like a like
the
spiritual
reptilians.
energy. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, there's a lot of different types. The type that we're usually referencing and talking about and interacting and experiencing with, and the fear that we have towards them is mostly a kind that is in the fourth dimension, but can also cross occasionally into the third or kind of be visible to us in the third. Either that's because our awareness is seeing into the fourth, or if they're stepping into the third is not fully clear. It seems probably like when you see them in that form, it's because, like, say your third eye or your frequency or whatever is enough that you can perceive it. And that even goes for like regular UFOs. That's why some people will
in and out of it.
Some people will see a UFO and other people won't. And, you know, that's because of their being able to see into that other dimension. Same thing like some people could see ghosts and other people can't. When you see ghosts, you're seeing into the fourth dimension. So these beings, though, there is mixing with human DNA. So that's the other thing that comes up a lot, is that these are 3D humans who maybe either have the energetic attachment or whatever to a fourth dimensional being that is also possibly using their body or is a part of their soul.
There's got to be some people that are well aware of the like symbiosis taking place, and they're just like, I'm all in, baby. I'm evil. Let's go.
I think a lot are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think most people are. I think some people who've been around it since they were younger, it's a bit different, you know, like people who are kind of like in those families where that was kind of, you know, maybe they're not as aware. But you obviously know if something is like kind of taking over your body, but at the same time, it's like, oh, this is like a really cute little corgi gift thing. That was cute. So yeah, it basically sometimes, you know, like if you're even like working on something creative, you can kind of like almost feel like you're channeling. So I wonder
100%.
if sometimes people, I don't know, like performers or whatever, some kind of feel like they're clicking into a flow state, and maybe it's
Yeah.
something different than a flow state, but I feel like they would be aware if this was happening to them.
I think that's most like more than likely a very natural process for a human normally. But at some point, probably like mid 1800s, like we just totally shifted our entire society, and the flow state's real. I'm sure there's studies about it and stuff. Joe Rogan talks about it, so it's obviously true. Flow state's real. We all know that, and it's like really helps you be creative, but also just like getting work done. Anything that's like enough of a challenge that you have to think about it, but you also enjoy doing it or whatever. But we're so like jammed up with chemicals, and it kind of sucks like waking up or whatever after a certain point, because you just like everywhere you're going, you're like, I'm gonna hungry, but all that's available is poison. And then you like get a water bottle and you're like, oh, this is poison.
It's true.
Plastic in this. It's killing me. But think if we didn't have all those things like holding us back, we'd probably be able to access those states
and you know,
and
there's
know
like
what to stay away from.
There's like a very fine line with that. You know, that was kind of my problem when I first moved to LA about 10 years ago. That was when I first started to learn about how poisonous everything was. That's when I stopped eating meat and all of this stuff. But you kind of go to a stage where you become like orthorexic. So I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but it's basically, it's not exactly an eating disorder, but it goes under that umbrella, because basically you become so obsessed with eating healthy or drinking the best water or eating the best food that you actually start to get fear around eating, because you're like, oh my God, this food has poison in it. This has this. So someone actually taught me like a good solution to that is to think about it as good, better, and best. So you're not going to always be able to eat. Yeah, you're not going to always eat the best. But if you could eat the best sometimes, eat better sometimes, or always be eating mostly 90% in like the good range, you're fine. Like you're in a good place.
Yeah.
Because you can't eat perfect, and then you'll literally go crazy. And then the other side too is that if your thoughts are creating your reality, then you doing something that you consciously think is bad is more dangerous than the person who doesn't think it's bad. So like the person who thinks Mountain Dew is perfectly fine is going to have less negative effects from the Mountain Dew than the person who's like, oh God, I know I shouldn't, but I just want to. And oh God, you know, and they're
but I know it's going to raise my blood pressure.
Exactly. And that's why people like Keith Richards were able to like go hard and party till like 80 years old without skipping a beat. And then someone else who's like, oh, I know I shouldn't have this drink, you know, has a horrible something happen right in the beginning of them knowing that the drinking's not good for them. So it's a weird fine line. People have a lot of cool questions. They're asking about like shadow people. Are shadow people giant aliens?
I think that kind of goes into what you were talking about with like the reptilians kind of shifting in, or that kind of explains like most of the sightings I've read about stuff like that is like, oh, I was talking to this person and then they turned around, and when they turned back, it was a monster, and then it just their face changed and they were them again, and I got out of there or whatever. But it seems like that might be something that's happening with the witness, not with the creature. It is.
Well, so I did tell you, and I do have a video on my YouTube about this, but about that I saw a reptilian person in real life and was attacked by it. And yes.
So
it is a person, but it is also like something like unexplainable happens also.
Or if anyone else would be able to see what you're seeing in that moment.
So that was actually, so when it happened, I'll be very abridged, but it was like, I was waiting for the bus. I had first moved to LA, and then I saw like some like guy like walking down the street, and he was like it was just like a very interesting thing because he was a guy, and was like very like ripped, like crazy skinny ripped, but was like moving like Selma Hayek in
Sounds
from
cool.
Dusk Till Dawn.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So I just like, I'm looking and I just kind of see like this guy who is like kind of sexily slithering down the street and is holding like his sweater above him so that he's blocking all the light. So he's just like got like a dark shadow around him. So I'm talking to some random person at the bus stop, and then I look and I'm kind of just like, what the fuck am I seeing right now? And this person like looks at me, has dark glasses on, looks at me and literally zooms, does not walk, zooms into me. And as this person, like when they look and zoom, they changed. He was not wearing a shirt, and then he was wearing a shirt, and gets in my face and is like, "Can you see me?" And I think this is like obviously like some person who's like coming down from something. This is also like 8 o'clock in the morning, by the way. So like, I'm like, oh God, this is someone coming down from the night before or whatever. And so also it was like very like feminine slithery, but then when it was in my face was like super angry, masculine, like wanting to kick my ass. And he's like, "Can you see me?" So I don't say anything. I'm trying to not engage with this situation. And so I don't say anything. And then he's like, "Can you fucking see me?" And I don't say anything. He says it again, and I'm like,
kind of a genius tactic, because if you couldn't see him, then you wouldn't react.
Then I wouldn't react. And I kind of was not reacting because I was purposely trying to not engage with this situation. And then when he screams in my face a third time, then I have no ability to not fight back. So I just like lose it, and I'm like, yeah, I fucking see you. And then he's like, good. Pulls off his glasses. I don't know why he pulls it off from the back of his head like that. Pulls off his glasses. One eye is a fucking giant snake eye. A snake eye and a regular size human eye, a big yellow snake eye, and goes like, pulls it off, and he's like, good, because I'm the sexiest thing in the world. And then spits at me, and this spit goes into my mouth and down my fucking throat.
Oh my
like
God.
With the precision of like non-human precision. How? And then he's gone. And then I look at the other people at the bus stop who are looking at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, do you have a tissue? Hello? And there was spit on my glasses. So I knew that it really happened. But the way that everyone was reacting was like frozen. Like literally they looked frozen. So then I get on the bus. The bus comes because I don't know what's wrong with me. Instead of going home and gathering myself, I'm like, well, I better go to work like the freaking human that I am in this horrible matrix. And which I was not really that aware of at the time. And I wasn't really aware of what like reptilians were. I didn't know about the whole thing. I knew about aliens, but not that. And I was really like more bothered by the fact that no one said, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
Because I grew up in New York and New Jersey, and like people
they'll intervene.
Speak up.
Yeah.
And these people were looking at me like I was crazy for getting attacked by a snake man.
Yeah.
And so I kept saying, I was like, why did no one ask if I was okay? Why did everyone act like they didn't see it? What the hell was that? The next day, I'm waiting for the bus again, and I get on, and the bus driver is like, hey, are you okay? And I'm like, why? He's like, I heard something happened to you yesterday. And I'm like, okay, so no one could ask if I was okay, but they could get gossip to the bus driver. So when I went under hypnosis, I asked about this. What was that? Why did the bus driver ask me a day later? What was that?
Was the bus there when it happened?
No.
Okay,
the bus was not there. And what these people waited for me to get off the bus and then ran to the driver and was like, oh, and then ran to the driver and was like, oh, by the way.
It was crazy.
She got spit down her,
like, oh my God,
on her throat from some freaking demon person.
He was like, can you see me? And she just stood there.
I know, like, and so the people that were at the bus, one was an old Latina lady, the other one was like a 70-year-old Korean lady, and the other one was some guy from Boston who just moved to LA. So like literally these people that were here were not like, it wasn't like, oh, guess what, bus driver? It was like, I doubt that any of these people were gossiping to the bus driver. So then when under hypnosis, the answer that I got was that this was a reptilian, that it was not specifically like really coming after me. Basically, when I was looking at it, it didn't like my energy. And basically me staring at him pissed him off. And he just wanted to scare me because out of like, screw you. And then the question about why did the bus driver ask me that? And the answer was like, basically, it was like the Matrix correcting itself in a way. Because I kept fixating on the idea of why did no one ask if I was okay? Why did people act like they didn't see it? And then it was almost like then that guy said it.
No, someone saw it and they were worried about you.
Yeah, so it was like the Matrix had to correct it in some way. I'm like, that was weird.
I get that.
Oh my God, was the guy from Boston named Kevin? Good looking with blue eyes. I don't know why. Did you hear this story? Is he the one who told the bus driver?
Right.
Has he told you
I
to?
know him. Yeah, everybody really likes it. Someone said that there's snakes that spit at people. Someone said a few minutes ago, he was angry that you saw the real side of him. Or maybe he was angry because he was having a bad day with the eye. Since he was walking around with glasses on. Hood. How long
I think it was. I think it was angry that I saw him. Maybe I don't know. He was embarrassed slithering down like that. I don't know.
Disbelief ends all questions. That's a great point. What did the hypnotherapist say about it? I don't think that's a hypnotherapist's job, but I'd like maybe did they give you?
So the hypnotherapist that I went to is trained in the Dolores Cannon method. So that is a little bit more open-minded. So he was very open to it because he was just kind of like, you never really know what's going to come through. So he didn't have any, hesitation about answering the question or any opinion about it.
What is the series called? I think of it as the Apocalypse series, but what is the series called when you go into all of the apocalypse
Oh,
stuff?
mine. It's
Yeah,
called Apocalyptic Prophecies. If you on my page, if you just go to the it just says Apocalypse for the playlist.
that one is such a mind blower. So, um, after I know that that was like years ago, but once you started researching reptilians, or whenever you did, did you instantly make a connection? Or
So I
I'm
didn't.
a stern believer in that, like, you kind of like have to be careful with your memory sometimes, because you'll just like
Mhm.
action. So I'd like to hear more about like.
So I actually didn't make that connection until years later. I was still like, I guess I did, but I didn't fully like acknowledge it. When I did learn about reptilians was from these videos on YouTube. This was probably like 2014. These videos, which I will not tell you the woman's name because I was so afraid. Like, I literally was so afraid. I barely meditated for 5 years after that. And I really don't like to go the fear method. So, like, a lot of times, even when I do talk about the scary stuff, I try to make it that in the end, the light always wins, you know?
Yeah,
But there was these videos, and this woman basically, you know how like there's like sometimes people will like record the room and then they can hear ghosts on the tape
yeah,
talking or whatever.
EVP.
So this woman did that, and then she started to realize that if you play things backwards, anything, the words that we're using at every second, our subconscious mind knows the truth. So the words that we select, if you play them backwards, are the truth. And so this woman was like, she used to do that with like videos of like Obama and, you know, like his whole yes we can, when you play it back it says thank you Satan. So like clear, so like all of these like things. So there's a bunch of them. There was ones talking about like the royal family talking about their kid, they play it backwards, it says scary stuff.
That's the
And you're
that's just to interject real quick. That's the one other big, well-known lizard story is, I think it was like one of Princess Diana's, assistants or something, just saw someone in the family shift, and it was just like blood curdling. They were scared for it.
Really? I've never heard that
Oh,
someone
okay.
saw it like that worked for them.
Yeah, it was somebody that worked
Wow.
for Princess Di, and I think, of course, I want to say it was the Queen, but who
Wow.
knows?
I wouldn't be surprised.
That's a David Icke one, so.
I love David Icke. He's very misunderstood. But if anyone actually like listens to his real, if any of you guys have Gaia, watch his show Escape the Matrix on Gaia. When he actually gets to talk without having like leading
Mhm.
questions and people picking at what he's saying so that he can't get to his point, he really gets it. He gets the Matrix. He gets
He's
how we got stuck in the Matrix. He understands it.
he's a savant. He is somebody that just can see. And I think we can only explain things in so many ways with the words we have at our disposal. And like, sometimes when you're talking about something, it sounds so outlandish or weird, and I try to emphasize that when I'm talking about it. And I think sometimes people take it the wrong way, but I do it because people like David Icke were villainized for talking about things that were too ridiculous. But when you spend time listening to him or reading his books, he's like an absolute like peaceful person that just is like giving away this brain trust of knowledge. He's just like,
Yeah.
this is what I know, just take it. And he had it
And a lot of his
laser beamed
words
into his
got
brain.
spun. A lot of his
Yeah.
words got taken out of context and got spun because, you know, obviously there's a lot of information that is being suppressed that he talks about. Someone is asking if you're a Capricorn.
No, I'm an Aries.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, just a few days ago.
Oh,
40.
cool.
Yeah, I'm 47.
No, you're not.
I I know that we like steamrolled this topic, and just let me know if you want to keep going with this topic. But I keep getting questions about shadow people, and I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
That's one of those
The
weird things.
shadow
I
people
love
phenomenon.
horror. I love horror. I love true crime, mysteries, conspiracies, aliens, all of it. And shadow people is one of those things that when I see an article about it, I just scroll. When I see a video, I just scroll because I'm a grown man. I live alone, and I don't want to think about that when I turn the lights off. It's like I'm good. But I of course I have some like referential knowledge and stuff. I know what the public probably knows, which is that of course it's a mental disorder. It's always something else. It's totally normal if you have it.
And I
It's a
don't believe
sleep
that,
disorder. Yeah.
but
Well, so fill me in a little bit if you don't mind.
okay, so shadow people are real. Um Definitely. Okay, so it has to do with the same thing we were talking about with being able to perceive into different frequencies, different dimensions.
Right.
So people are usually never going to see, oh, hey, cool glasses here. um, People are not going to be able to see shadow people if they're kind of just like living in a high vibration, positive mindset, all of that. I've never heard of it happening in those cases. So it's very linked to depression. It's very
Mm,
linked to drug use.
mm.
It's linked to when you get to very low frequencies. So when most of the time when people are experiencing shadow people, they're usually going through like a really dark patch, and they're kind of like feeling like when you're in that point of depression where you're sucked down that you feel like you can't get out. It's like you've reached like a low enough frequency where now you're able to perceive something that is kind of like outside of our regular spectrum, like you've gone lower than the regular spectrum. So a lot of times people see this when they do certain substances, especially, one that, rhymes with math. And, you know, that's why you'll see them out of the peripheral. So, like, a lot of times people, when they do that, they literally see these, like, almost feel like they're like beings on the side of them and they can't get rid of them. And you could see them out of your peripheral because basically too they say that you can kind of see a little out of the reality through your peripheral,
Just
so that's why people see them that way.
just beyond the like the normal visible spectrum. Like we're just
Hmm.
accessing part of our lens that we normally don't, which is really interesting because with like mushrooms and different psychedelics and stuff, I believe like the reason that like hunters and stuff would use it was because it like really heightens visual acuity. So
Hmm.
you can see farther with more detail. But I know that
A lot of people are asking about children. Some people say children see them, some people say they saw them when they were children. That's because children are closer to that, like being on the other side of the veil, which is why a lot of times kids see um you know ghosts and angels and aliens and all of these things, and they will see shadow people. So for them it's usually not about being in that low frequency, it's because they're just like able to see, because they're not kind of constricted as far into like our reality.
they do seem to be observers though, right? Are they
The
aggressive?
shadow people,
Yeah, are they aggressive, or is it just the the emotion that it invokes in us because we don't understand, so we're scared, or do they like are they trying to harm?
so my understanding of them is that there's ones that are kind of look just like figures. There's a hat man. So a lot of people see the hat man. There was a girl that was viral like a week ago talking about how her therapist told her to sage. And then she started saying that there's a hat man. And me and a bunch of people in the comments were like, yo, that hat man, you're not schizophrenic. Maybe you are. But the Hat Man is real because thousands of people have seen the Hat Man.
Yeah,
And then there's the old hag, which is basically like the old lady that happens during sleep paralysis that goes onto people's chest and like I don't know. Let me see. Is there anyone that knows the old hag?
Um, so the kind of like the reason I believe a lot of the things I believe, or am just very open to things, is because when I was a kid, I just so much happened all the time. It was like I had no filter for what I was seeing, and I would see. I think when you see something you can't understand, your brain just puts like a filter over, like, well,
Mm-hmm.
that's an airplane, and that's why I tell people I think the truth is so bizarre that if you were staring at it, you wouldn't even know. And when I don't know how old, I think like 5 or 6, I would see what my brain saw as like the Wicked Witch from The Wizard of Oz, except she was in like a constant state of like melting. And
Oh my God. That
it,
sounds like
and it
the
got,
old hag.
yeah, and it got bad, and it eventually, like, I don't remember what happened. I only know what my parents told me, but that ended up with me just like anytime something paranormal or something would happen around me, I just have to remind myself, like, just ignore it. So, like what you were saying, when people are just kind of checked out, they're just going to work every day trying to make rent. I just kind of became that person because the more you kind of like, but when you brought up the hag, it just clicked with me about that. I don't
Wow.
talk about that story very
Someone
much.
on my end is saying that they saw something like the Wicked Witch when they were younger too.
Yeah. And it started with the hand. I had a toy box at the end of my bed, and the hand would come reach out of my toy box and be padding around. And my parents put a note on my door that said, no witches or green hands allowed. Yeah. It didn't
You
work.
know,
Right.
kids are actually right about a lot of this stuff. You know,
Yeah.
I do believe the kids, obviously, sometimes they're making, playing make believe, but you can tell when a kid is genuinely scared
Yeah.
and has genuinely experienced something. Um, but I mean, it's hard to know how to handle that, as a parent or even as a person who's seeing them. So I think we should at least mention that if people are kind of seeing these things, I think the best thing to do is, I mean, I don't have any for sure answers, but I feel like you have
Engage
to
verbally.
yeah, tell it. I mean, yeah, you can declare that you don't want anything to do with it. But I think you really have to get out of a place of fear, because
Oh, yeah.
there's something's happening energetically. These things are connected to lower vibration emotions like fear, like depression, like a psychosis that is happening from a drug induced episode. They're very like, they're into that emotion. So you need to get yourself out of that emotion. And I know it's hard, to just say like, don't be depressed or something, but like, that's where you have to do like heart centering exercises. You have to be like going to the heart, knowing that you're protected, knowing that regardless, you're in charge of your life, you're, able to get out of it.
Even if you
And
don't believe it at first, you just have to tell yourself that, because I've had to do that with different apartments and stuff. Like, no, this is my house, and it sounds so stupid. And if you're scared and you start saying stuff like that, you don't believe it. But it
mhm.
does like work pretty quickly.
So it seems like you're kind of a bit psychic.
I think it's dead now, probably, but I think or I don't, I think it's not acute anymore. I think it's very broad. But I don't know, you kind of attribute psychic to like they know something, or like they can read your mind. And from it, if that was true about me, it would just be like, oh, it's really annoying, because like it, someone will be slamming something in my apartment, but I live alone. So, but I experienced the same thing that with people ignoring it or just not seeing it or whatever. I had an apartment that bordered like a, I do not know the current politically correct term for this, um, native protected land, I guess I'll say.
Okay.
So super old land in Washington, and Washington State, and it was the worst living situation I've ever been in from day one. Just slamming in the kitchen, you know, shaking around in my bathroom that was like attached to my room. And I had 2 roommates, and they were a couple that lived across the house, and it was one level. And it was getting to the point where I would run out into the kitchen and be like, ah, you know, like just trying to scare the ghost away or something. Like, I'm not scared of you.
God.
And they just ignored it, and they were like, we don't know what you're talking about. Oh yeah, I heard that thump. I just thought it was you. And I'm like, well, I'm telling you it's not. And they just didn't care. But I eventually, that's when I really had to start practicing the this isn't happening, and it's my house anyway, and a ghost can't hurt me. So,
and those things are all true.
yeah,
the ghost can't hurt you.
But now
this is a good place to circle back to the recording of ghosts. So this woman started recording the ghosts and then playing it backwards to see if the ghosts were telling the truth. And that's how she found out about reptilians. And then that's how I found out about them, was because of her ghost videos or ghost recordings being played backwards. And basically over years, she realized she had been communicating with this ghost. And then she started playing the tapes backwards and realized the ghost had been lying to her the whole time and found it hilarious. The ghost thought,
would that be a ghost at that point?
Well, the ghost was basically saying he was stuck in the 4th dimension, and this was the only entertainment that he had, was playing jokes on her, because he was basically stuck because there was reptilian overlords that
he's just
prevented his soul from leaving the planet, and that he was stuck there. So that was about all that he could do. And it scared the shit out of me. I was so scared listening to these things that I was like, oh my God, they're real. And like,
that's kind of a heavy load to put on somebody that's just like, I want to understand the situation better. That's a lot.
It's crazy. It's definitely crazy. People are saying reptilians could do that. And it's like, how can they get into your body if you astral project?
Real quick, Brittany Peterson's asking what reservation it was. That's what I was kind of trying to say. I don't know the term for it. It was not a reservation. It was like a protected, like, wildlife area where this certain tribe like used to populate or something. But it was protected, and it was just, obviously the land is super old. But if you know anything about Washington State, I don't know if this is still the record, but they found like the world's like oldest like human body, like human remains there. And there's just been people there for, you know, hundreds of thousands of years or something. So yeah, maybe historically protected land, something like that. Okay. So I'm from Washington. Okay. Sorry about that.
So, you know, they say that there's that area of Washington in the Nostradamus books and everything, when they show the maps of the future after the earth shift, after the floods, after the upheavals. There's a little part of Washington where they say is going to be protected. So you got to zoom into the map and get
there. During or after?
Well, the point of the book that we're finding out from is 100 years into the future, from 1987 to 2087. So it's above ground in 2087. Someone's saying they want to read the book so bad. I mean, there's a lot of good Dolores Cannon books. I would suggest reading Keepers of the Garden first. That's the best one.
Have you seen that map that is like the highest concentrated areas of like missing persons, and then the highest concentrated areas of cave entrances?
Wow. No, I haven't.
It is like a perfect overlap. Sorry, just what you said about the map just reminded me.
You know, a lot of those maps are very similar. Like, it's interesting when you look at any of the maps for like prophecies or like any creepy stuff that kind of blocks off certain areas, they're very similar. So I feel like a lot of that stuff is energetic.
I think it's really crazy because, like, just to be honest, like, I intentionally frame things in what I would consider an entertaining way, because I just started this a couple months ago, and before that was 10 years of me trying to find like content that I enjoyed consuming around these topics, because so much of it is like, it's just buried somewhere on Reddit or some
It's
old blog
not like
stuff.
it used to
Or
be years
yeah,
ago. All of this stuff, there was so many good videos on YouTube years ago that are all gone
yeah,
now.
that's like what got me into UFOs was like I just did a video on crop circles, and that story was from this video I saw that was like a piece of a documentary, and it was from like 12 years ago, and it was like this super old YouTube channel.
Best ones.
But the hollow earth thing, like, who knows if there's people down there? But like what people need to understand,
We do know.
what people need to understand is that, like, because there's like solid ground under your feet, like that doesn't mean any. There are caves all over the world, but especially in North America. It is wild. They go back thousands of years. There's a bunch of man-made ones. There's a bunch of architecture that we have no explanation for all over North America. I'm sure I'm not talking about flat Earth, but I'm sure a bunch of people know what I'm referencing when I say there's structures all over North America that are like stone, and we apparently no one had ever built a structure like when we got here. When Europeans started taking over, it was just all wild land. So it just doesn't make sense. And
There's a lot of weird information about that too. There's some evidence that shows that there was possibly a great solar flash, and that's what actually created the Grand Canyon, because the Grand Canyon is basically like a completely different type of rock structure than other places, and they're saying that it happened from the melting. So it's
it looked
possible
melted.
that there was other things here that were kind of melted, but I don't
Have
know.
you have you been to the Grand Canyon?
Um, I feel like I have when I was younger,
Yeah.
but not really like at any age of like being conscious of what it really is.
Yeah, I went a few years ago, and there's like absolutely no words to. You don't realize, like, you think you have an idea of how big Earth is, but then you see the Grand Canyon and you're like, oh, I have no idea like what scale even means anymore.
And isn't there
So
parts that you can't go to anymore that you used to be able to go to in the 70s?
it's extremely controlled.
Because I
It's
see some weird maps
You are
that
allowed to go to certain parking lots, and then you look out, and that's it. Or you might be able to hike somewhere, but I didn't see that.
I've seen a weird map. I'll have to find it. I know I have it saved in my phone, like everything else, but um it's kind of like suggesting it's a map that's kind of suggesting that civilizations from all over traveled there for the flash. So I don't know. It's not something that I know too much about. I'll have
Sounds
to
like a
look
setup.
into it. I'll have
Hey,
to
come on over, come watch this, and then it's just
and then they flash, but they knew it was like the end.
yeah. Just to quickly touch on that, I think that like one of the most interesting things I've kind of run across, and it's one of those things like you and I have talked about before. The weirdest things get a lot of pushback when you're trying to post about them, and I know I have a few inner Earth videos out, but the first one I tried to get out was really rough, and then um, what it kind of seems like is that there's really similar structures that like all over the world in major areas along like the equator and different places like that, and they're all very similarly designed, and they're all pyramids. And
Mm.
we know that Earth is on a cycle, and that cycle might not favor humans at all times. Like it's like a replenishing, and um totally blue pilled non-conspiracy people will just like say like, oh yeah, humans are a cancer or a parasite. It's like a knowledge that we have that we're kind of bad for Earth in certain numbers. I don't love that idea, but it's
Yeah.
almost like Earth has a way of shaking us off. And it seems like at some point there was a global civilization that was either in perfect harmony using these pyramids and connected tunnels and all of this technology that we can't even fathom, to either just live in harmony with the earth or kind of measure when these things are going to happen. And I think it's really telling that you're not allowed. All of our history about pyramids and all that stuff is like 150 years old. You're not allowed to make new discoveries. And Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson are awesome for that stuff, but it's like Graham Hancock has been making all these crazy discoveries and he's just not allowed to talk about it. They just won't publish it. So
And it's crazy we're at this point where people are kind of coming across this information, figuring out things on their own. It's like collectively, because even like stuff like TikTok, each person is kind of posting a little different part of the story.
Yeah.
So the people watching that are into this stuff are adding it all together, you know? So it is very interesting that, especially stuff to do with ancient Egypt, that there's still like suppression about any new information coming out. But that has to do with so many things. I mean, look at science. Like, there's a lot of pushback for new information to not be publicly known, you know?
Well, yeah, it's illegal now.
Right?
So, yeah, it's really scary. And I think you have a really good solution for this, and I've been enacting it more and more since we talked about it. But I get so many comments like, this is wrong. Like, this isn't what they taught us in school. Can't you read? And it's like, I can't, there's nothing I can say to people that, like, maybe it's my way of presenting things, but I try to just say, like, this is an idea that someone has. I try not to say, this is what I believe, and you should be scared. But I don't know how to talk to people like that and try to help them understand. I don't know what the lie I need to shine a light on is, because I don't remember what it was for me.
Well, you know what though? Like, skeptics are only hurting themselves.
I know. Yeah.
Like, the skeptics, like, I don't know, do they think like them saying, "Oh, you're stupid. Didn't you go to history class?" Do they really think that they're hurting people's feelings by doing that? It's like, dude, I'm on the most amazing adventure that I could ever be on in this life. Do you realize I'm about to fucking help people shift out of this dimension?
Yeah.
Do you think that I'm ready to be like, oh wow, some random person commented that I'm stupid, like I'm gonna go back on everything? It's like, no, they're only hurting themselves because they're waiting for an expert or some person, you know, to tell them what to think. And most of those experts are not open to new information because they don't want to invalidate themselves. Imagine having an entire career about something, you know, some type of physics or something within physics, and then finding out that all matter is an illusion. I'm not going to let go of that because that's my entire identity, my entire life's work. So, no, I'm not waiting for experts to tell me that they were wrong.
But to me,
like,
I
no.
hear something like all matter is an illusion, and I'm like, ooh, and then what? Like, what else?
Yeah.
It's not like
that's
you believe
the adventure that we're on.
There are certain things that just, they make sense. And it's like, it just clicks with you after a while. Someone commented, I'm going to try to say the name. I think it's Asul. They said, not everyone can come. It is what it is. I think that was in relation to what you said about helping people kind of, uh-oh, I can't hear you.
Oh, there you go.
Oh,
sorry, someone called me because they owe me an apology. They owe me an apology, so my apology was coming in, but I
thought
had to
that was
reject it.
I thought that was you getting taken down.
No, it was my much deserved apology that I'll be calling back for after this.
Yeah, someone said, I think in relation to what you said, that not everyone can come. It is what it is, and I agree with that. And not in the like the club, like the clubhouse isn't big enough for you. It's it just is what it is because of people. I mean, think about that. If you're not even aware of what's going on around you, how could you ascend to any kind of state of higher being? And we don't know what that looks like. I mean, I know we all draw our own conclusions, but that's one of the things that kind of hooked me on you was like when I found you, it was kind of like the part of your series that you're on was kind of black pill, like the antichrist is here. And you hooked me because you wouldn't say who it was, which like totally understandably. And so I was like, no, who is it? And then I was like going through all your comments trying to find someone that would.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
it was like
I know that was
a
wild, but
flood. Oh my God. I felt like my phone was going to explode.
but I believe you spoke about Baba Vanga during that series, right?
I don't know. I don't
The
think
psychic.
so. The one psychic that I talked about, what was her name? The one, but she was a psychic that worked for the presidents. She was a psychic to several of the presidents. The one that I was talking about, gosh, why can't I think of her name?
Because
Dixon? No. Something like that.
I thought you were talking about Baba Vanga. I was researching something about her, like when I heard that, and it was just like this big click moment.
Oh,
but
Jean Dixon. Yeah, thank you. People are commenting.
Okay. But yeah, it was so kind of like scary, but it made sense with everything that's going on. And then when you moved into your Earth Shift series, I was like, okay, thank God.
I know.
Maybe there's
so literally that was my spiritual team helping out.
Yeah.
Because after I posted about that antichrist stuff, I got a terrible feeling. I was like, oh man, I just fucked up real bad.
Well, I know because you posted a video where you're like, what do I do about this? And I was like, no, don't do anything. It's just,
well, that's what, when I first figured it, or when I first thought that I figured it out, of course, I can't say whether I'm right or anything, I don't know. But when I first did, it really messed me up. Like going to work the next day, I was like, and I mean, the person who I believe it is does also have vacation properties in this area. So it is also a possibility that they could have. I worked in Beverly Hills. It was very possible for like something like that to have matched up.
yeah.
Because of the amount of people that I've, met working in LA is insane.
Real quick,
so like
commented she knows the Antichrist, and I'm just gonna say, just go watch the series.
Yeah, my Apocalypse series, but I don't reveal who it is. It's up to everyone to take.
You don't have to tell them that. You just lost a bunch of views.
They got to figure it out on their own.
You don't say who it is, but you give a lot of determining information, and
that's why I messed up.
When I went through all of that and kind of looked it up, I didn't come to a conclusion. I wasn't like, oh, that's who it is, but there's a list of suspects.
Exactly. And it's very funny too to see the people that people think it is.
It's Jared Leto.
I know people say the funniest things, like what is this actress?
Oh, someone said, is it the same even though it's the Ethiopian calendar thing? Would it still be all the same? Would it line up?
That's what I wonder. Also, what I've wondered in the whole process is that if we're on the highest timeline, is that stuff going to never materialize? Is he never going to fully step into this role of the Antichrist because there's so many of us on Earth that are manifesting the highest timeline? So that's the other thing that I wonder. And that's why, there's the Earthshift series, because it's like, we don't even need any of that to happen. I would prefer to be wrong and that none of it ever comes, and Nostradamus is wrong, and the book of Revelation's wrong, and the book of Enoch's wrong, and every prophecy is wrong. I would love for that to be the case, and I think that would be by us shifting the timeline collectively.
Unfortunately, I have a bad feeling that our current young adults, and you can't speak for everybody, but it's going to be a very authoritarian generation, and I know that there's
coming
a
up.
lot, yeah, because that's kind of how they were raised. But I think a lot of us just that are researching this feel the same way that you do, and it's like this would be an exciting way to go because it wouldn't be like hellfire, but I would prefer the status quo because at least we could do something about injustice at that point.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know. I feel like the younger generation, they're going to figure it out. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, the younger generation, I feel like they got this. They just need to like not get sucked into all of the ways to lose themselves because there's so many narratives that are like forcing them to have identity crises and things like that. But it's like if they can connect with who they are, which they're already doing, you know, which is
There's
why.
so young people that they see right through it at the same time. Like, no,
Yeah.
that's bullshit, and I am who I am.
And
Like,
they're still figuring things out. And when you think about when we were their age, you know, I didn't understand a lot of the things that they understand already. So, I mean, I have
yeah.
faith. A lot of people talk about, like, oh, Gen Z is going to be like this. I'm like, I mean, honestly, Gen Z is going to do better than us all. They already are.
When I
They
was
already
I was
hacked it.
a baby when I was like 14 or 15, and now you see like a 14 and 15-year-old, and they know more about like current affairs because everything is so fast now.
I mean, I don't know if I knew about current affairs, but I was a beast at 14. I was a menace to society at
Yeah.
14. So I'm glad I got all of that out of my system early on, which is how I can be this composed version of myself now.
J Finn 1. I don't know about Rome. I believe in Rome the same amount that I believe that there's aliens watching us from the moon. We don't know.
And aliens are definitely watching us from the moon.
And
So
and aliens are definitely but, when it's hard because you can get into kind of like a spiral sometimes, and you get to a point when you're researching, it's like everything comes down to this. Everything comes down to this. And I think one of the more true moments I've had of kind of like self-discovery is that like I'm okay with the understanding that like we just have no idea what happened before like 150 years ago, because we have just proven it. It's been proven multiple times throughout the last 40, 50 years that you can completely change the public perception of an event or erase it from ever having happened within like 20, 25 years. It's really easy. It
even
happens
sooner because
yeah.
a lot of the stuff that has happened in the media over the last several years, if you do any bit of research on your own, it's never the story that we were told.
No.
You know, like any of these cases or anything that get a lot of attention, when you really look into them, there's always some type of story that you're like, huh, that's an
It just
interesting
happened to me
detail that was
last
left
week.
out.
Lucky Rocks, don't be scared. That's the worst thing to be. I know it's scary, but that's the base idea here is that something feeds on all of our negativity, and that's why we're constantly expected to be scared and afraid and stressed out and angry all the time. And
And this is why sometimes you have to experience extreme fear. Like maybe that's what happened. Why I needed to see one of these things right in my face. And it did scare me. But then you reach a point where you're kind of like, okay, well, that's it. Like, am I going to live my entire life being afraid, or am I going to continue down my spiritual path knowing that there's going to be some scary shit along the way?
Yeah. Sorry, there's just some things in here, guys, that I can't say. Unfortunately, there's certain words and certain terms that we can't talk about, especially on live. And also, I did want to say,
I'm curious what your people are saying, because mine over here are all really nice.
Oh, it's nothing hateful or anything like that, but
they want to talk about the scary stuff.
There's some theories, yeah, that no matter how much evidence there are and stuff, like I'm trying to think of like a way to talk about it. So
Someone is saying write it on a piece of paper. I like the way
Um,
you think.
well, there's a certain rumored designer drug that people are a couple people have asked about, which that's really scary. I know the designer drug made of people, I guess I'll say, of pituitary glands or whatever, adrenochrome.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, I mean, Hunter S. Thompson told us about that in the 90s,
It's funny
That's
how
when
it wasn't a conspiracy theory until it was.
Well, the thing is though is that that word was not, but
Yeah,
that
the effect.
story of where it's coming from has been around the whole time. Because that's kind of the same story as even like Dracula or all of these things. It's kind of like, sucking someone's life force, and it's kind of always been around. But Hunter S. Thompson talked about it in Fear and Loathing. That's what he's on in Fear and Loathing when he almost dies. And then, there's all that stuff about Hunter S. being involved with all of this,
I don't
the
I
snuff
don't know anything
films and
about that.
everything.
I just know that he um just offed himself when he was ready to be done, but I didn't know that he was actually like involved with anything or had any kind of advanced knowledge.
I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff. If you look into what Hunter S. talked about, I mean, I used to love him when I was younger. Over the years, as I've kind of read things a little further, I feel kind of
Bad
like
vibe.
this guy was a monster
Yeah.
and he was a glorified monster. But when you read some of what he was saying, you're like, actually, this person was disgusting. And he did talk about, people, kids being taken for rituals, being given to other people as gifts.
Yeah.
And he talks about like the Palm Beach where Epstein lived, and he talked about like a lot of the stuff that people were getting paid to do in that area, that young girls were getting paid to do. So a lot of that stuff actually, when you do kind of like look at it with new eyes, being aware of stuff, it's very interesting that he actually kind of was talking subtly about a lot of it.
Yeah, and when I was right at the beginning of when I started making TikToks, I was really interested in like what's the closest thing to a vampire? What's the closest thing to a werewolf? And like the more you research it, you're like, it's kind of just that. It's just not as like widespread because there's so many like encounters with like dog men, and there's multiple historical figures like throughout history, which we just talked about. Who knows if it's real, but it's like, oh yeah, we used to hang out with this one guy all the time, and he could speak every language, and he was a master musician, and he was a great tactician. And then 70 years later, he reappeared and hadn't aged. And it's just like people just write stuff like that about historical figures, and it's
like what's keeping the vampires young?
what is that?
Blood.
And they're involved in the kingdoms and the governments and stuff, and then they just one of them, I'm not gonna say his name, but one of them just chose to die. That was like the way that he passed, like historically. They're like, and then he laid down and chose to die, and it's like, are we not
it was about
questions?
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there is obviously, because there is also energy vampires. Energy vampires are real too. But it's a little bit different, So what they say with the energy vampire, I saw someone comment something about narcissists, which, yeah, narcissists are energy vampires, and similar things. People who have like a lot of really unhealed trauma and kind of hurt other people through that. Because basically, every single person, you're getting your energy from source. You have your life energy that you get from sleeping and eating and that. And then you have a life force energy, which is non rechargeable. It is your spirit and whatever. And that energy is coming from, God, source, the universe. And some people who are not connected to that, or who are so in like a dark place from, narcissists or narcissists because of trauma. And those narcissists can't get the life force from God itself. So they need to get it from someone who's willing to give it. Who's willing to give it? The empath. So they're
Yeah.
feeding on the empath's life force because they're the only person that's willing to sacrifice their own life force for another person.
But they see it as they're like trying to help the person that's
Yeah.
gaslighting. And so I'm interested that you said that the other energy, like our aura, it's not rechargeable. So
or at least not
do you mean
your,
by our means, like our,
like not
or,
your life energy?
yeah.
So like, I mean, I'm sure you can, there's a lot of exercises, I'm sure, like the Kundalini stuff. And I'm sure there's a lot of things that people can do to kind of recharge that. But I
Yeah.
feel like maybe the average person who's not doing spiritual techniques and expanding that and working with their energy field, probably when it gets depleted, it's hard for them to recharge it.
We're getting a lot of comments about narcissists and
Well, they're the worst. Everybody hates them, huh? And
Brittany
there's more and more every day.
Brittany Peterson says, yes, I used to be a huge bully and I thrived on people's energy. Glad I am now a better person. It's funny when you come out the other side, how easy it is to see your behavior. And you're like, God, I was just doing this. That's what was happening.
And that's
Yeah.
why I think there has to be a little bit more also understanding, because obviously anyone who does anything wrong today is like, nail them to the cross, they're done.
Yeah.
And it's like, really, most people that are doing things that are wrong or bad, it's one, because they're unaware, two, because they're unhealed. They have unhealed trauma. They're not understanding. They're not going to understand by being attacked. So it's like, someone like that who said that comment that, she kind of changed from that. That's really where we should be like thriving, that not everyone who's like has these maybe narcissistic tendencies or kind of bullies people, that's coming from something else, and, we do
It's
have
also,
to give people a path to redemption.
it's also strange because we all know the idea of perspective, but it's really strange how sacrificing something or losing something would give you a real life definition of perception, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, that's what it's like through someone else's eyes. Okay. And it's like everything changes, and then it's a game of catch up, trying to grow your adult personality because you're still a little hurt child inside.
Yeah. And exactly. Everyone handles things different, like, some people get hurt, but then other people, like say me, when I was younger, I wouldn't get hurt by things. I would get super angry.
Yeah.
So like everyone handles things differently. So a lot of times, say if someone might have been a bully, that's how they were handling the pain that they were going through. And, obviously that doesn't make it right. But with that understanding, we're going to get a lot farther by having compassion as opposed to just then, okay, this is a bad person, they're written off forever.
Yeah. Abby Faye Rose said, where do psycho/sociopaths fit into all this? I have some thoughts, but what do you think?
Well, I know that they're different. One is from birth, right? And then one is like the psychopath is something that's kind of born in the brain, is not processing, right? And then the sociopath is someone who becomes this way because of trauma. At least that's what I think I remember reading. So I feel like, I mean, the person who was kind of born that way, they're all the CEOs. They're the celebrities. Those are the people who are killing it. So I don't feel bad for them. They're thriving.
people hear psychopath and they think Hannibal Lecter or like Jason or something, but in reality, exactly. they tend to do pretty well because
my God,
they don't have the moral hang-ups that most of us have. So they'll be like your really good friend, you'll start a business together, and then they'll just like write you out of the company and all of your claim and money, and that's how they make their first million, and it's part of their Cinderella story to them. They're like, I can't.
Exactly.
That guy was dumb enough to sign that. Can you believe it? And then they laugh
And
about
that's what I wonder about these people. I think that there is some spiritual stuff also playing a part. I don't fully know because, you know, I do believe that everyone's soul is learning, everyone incarnated on earth to learn lessons. So I wonder, are those people just like really failing on the soul level? They're thriving on earth, but then once they go back, they failed the whole test.
it.
I
Well,
hope
we
so.
we also know that like this, like the constructed society. I'm not like an anarchy person or anything, but like the society, the way we live is like not really tailored for us to be like super mentally healthy. We're just kind of shoved in the cube and just do your best. Don't break any of these laws, and that's what you do. But in reality, like we're supposed to be exerting a lot of energy. We're supposed to be cold. We're supposed to be too hot. We're supposed to be looking for resources. I'm not saying we're like supposed to be cave people, but we're supposed to be much, much more in touch with ourselves and our environment. And I'm in a neon room. I know like I'm not saying anybody is like worse for not being that way. That's just how society is now. And that is like printing psychopaths. A lot of us just deal and we just go with it. And maybe that's more sociopaths. I don't know the difference, to be honest. But we also know, like, kind of your TikTok namesake, JK Ultra, we also know that they have worked on this. Like, geez, we just don't have enough psychopaths. How do we make them? And they've made them, let them out into the wild. A bunch of murders or attacks happen. Then they lock them back up and throw away the key. And then we find out about it and nothing changes, nothing happens. That'd be a good series for you to cover.
It's true. A lot of people are saying really good things here too. Some people are saying, let me see, let me go back up. That some of these people, like psychopaths or narcissists or these things, maybe they were here to provide those experiences for someone else, which is a good
such a good point.
On it. Yeah, because maybe they've already learned certain lessons or whatever, and they're kind of just here to teach other people hard lessons because that's also needed.
Ravy Baby says, kind of off subject, have you seen the movie Flesh? Thoughts on that? The 1% of the 1% eating people. It sounds like a documentary. I know it's not seen it, but like the 1% of the 1%, that's a pretty small number. But from what I've seen, something like that is going on because you don't have baby farms set up for like no reason. So
yeah. I did not see that movie Flesh.
But... Hi, Blake. Good to see you, buddy.
So some people are asking about background people. Are you aware of this concept?
I love that. Let's talk about that.
Okay. So it's kind of a dangerous topic because...
Bullying?
Not necessarily bullying, but when you have this idea of background people, it does could potentially hurt people's ability to have compassion. And we are meant to have compassion. So it does make it a little difficult, but there is some stuff in the Dolores books. Her later books, right before she died, she talked about it in her last two books, where basically these background people... So basically there's these people, like sometimes if you're just driving, the person who's in the car next to you allegedly might not be a person who has a soul and a purpose and chose their life. That they might just be a materialization of your inner state and your consciousness. And they're just kind of getting shaped like background actors in the movie of your life. That people that you interact with most likely do have a soul and a purpose. And then some other people don't. So one of the things that is in the Dolores book that she asks is basically, she's like, well, who are these people? Where are they come from? What is the energy from? And the person says that they're almost like a slave energy. that is taken from another place and brought here. So I don't know. And then Dolores kind of like brushed it off a little bit and didn't like get further into that concept. And then she died after that book. So I really
Yeah.
don't know.
Someone said like Truman Show. 88 said like
Mm-hmm.
Truman Show, and I think probably not, because everybody on Truman Show was a willing participant, intentionally trying to fool a main character, and I don't know. I don't know if there's a main character here. Someone said, I'm wondering the same thing. Historical practice of
Someone saying, are they self-aware? I don't believe so. I think, and regular people that are just in the background of your life are most likely real people. If you're interacting with them, they're most likely real people.
Especially if they're spitting in your mouth.
Yeah,
a lot of people
exactly.
are
And being
asking
able
about,
to get it in there.
a lot of people are asking about baby farms. We're not going to go into that. I'm sorry for saying it, but let's just say that, oh my God, I don't know. There's a lot of, when a big kingpin of an organization gets arrested, and then all of the charges are really like vague, and then he passes away in prison right after that, and all of the news coverage is around that. But there's a lot of things that were verified and had stories written about them and were put into evidence and were rated by the ABC agencies, the three-letter agencies. And there was a lot of like weird stuff going on that just didn't get covered by the mainstream media. And one of them was referred to as a baby farm. So that's where that comes from. But for the most part, confirmed. Yeah. So sorry, I had
Some
to be
people are
so.
asking, how do you know if you're a background person? I can guarantee you're not a background person if you're
You're
asking
not
that question.
asking that question. Yeah. You're commenting a blue baseball cap if you're not a real person.
So someone asked, what about the Karens? Are they real? So I actually had a weird thought watching one of these Karen videos. Cause like, sometimes like the Karens will like throw themselves on the floor and start like hysterically screaming. Like it's really weird. And I was wondering at one point, I was kind of like having, sometimes like one of those things where things are like clicking and maybe they're clicking too much that you're like, wait, is this just a weird thought or is this like actually what's happening? So I was watching one of those videos, the Karen videos. I think it was like the Victoria's Secret Karen. And she was glitching out. And I was like, is this
She was
woman
sides on herself.
the one that was throwing herself on the floor?
Yeah.
And
It was
so
bizarre.
ridiculous. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, is this woman a real person, or is this something that the collective is creating? Are we all putting our energy towards this and creating this horrible entity
Yeah.
in the culture and in our reality? And I'm sure, yes, there is real Karens, of course. We know them in real life. However, there is sometimes these things that happen that are like, is this like part of the hologram? Like all of us saying that this happens and seeing this happen, that we created some of these monsters and they're not even real?
It does seem to really pick up when there's some new added chaos or pressure on the world stage. And I don't know about you, but for me, a lot of times it's like this like struggle to not, obviously, I mean, hopefully I'm never laying down in a Walmart like screaming and crying, but who knows? But you have that thought where you're like, this could be really bad. This could be it. Do I have enough toilet paper? I don't know. And you start to get that like fearful energy, which that's what I just tell people, don't be scared, because right off the bat, you just need to not be scared. And it seems to like you said, either we're pouring so much of that out that some people don't have a filter and they're absorbing it, and then they just explode because they can't. I mean, think about everything that's happened in the last few years. Like, there's no way everybody's going to be able to handle that, especially if, for the most part, they've never really like faced any kind of diversity, you know? And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, there's something that's affecting the entire world that some people are going to blow their tops. But then there's
It's
those,
it's been
I,
nuts. People
the,
are glitching out for sure.
there's a big difference in between like being angry over a parking spot and the full blown, like, you don't even know what you're yelling about anymore and you're on the floor, like, or
Like
freezing.
going, yeah.
I love
There's
that.
definitely, yeah, there's a difference. Exactly. There's like a level of like people, exactly, who some people are just kind of like reaching some type of psychotic breaking point, and then other people are like, are you even a real person? Like,
Feeding it just said nothing is real anymore. It's time to ascend. Um,
hell yeah.
I agree and I disagree, because nothing is real anymore can be like really, really good and really, really bad in your life. But I get what you're saying. Kind of like the world's a stage. Someone said that. Can't talk about that.
Someone saying they need to catch this video of the Karen on the floor and everything. You really don't. It gets burned into your mind and you can never unsee it.
I
Just,
try not to watch
this is
that
why I
because,
actually block a lot of creators on TikTok. Actually, I have a lot of creators blocked, because if they post a lot of that type of content, I'm like, I don't want to spend my whole afternoon in a rabbit hole of why this woman is
it's not funny to me.
fucking freaking
Like,
out.
it,
Yeah.
it,
No,
it
or
gives me
it's
really,
upsetting,
it's
and
upsetting.
it's also just a, like, I don't know. Then I'm like, why am I looking at this person's page? And now I'm down like a whole rabbit hole of a bunch of shit that, like, I can't.
That's what I was gonna say. You can feel it immediately pull you in, and then you're like,
Mm-hmm.
well, the next one. What's the next one? Oh, this one's not as bad. I just saw someone like throw human matter at someone else in a store.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see a car wreck now. Like, it,
It's
I don't know if,
true.
I'm sure this probably is not something that you've been interested in, but as a younger man, people would always be like watching like street fight videos on their phones around me, and the noises from that gave me like such bad anxiety, because when you're in a situation like that, like as soon as it's over and all the feeling like hits you, all the adrenaline wears off. I can't. It's the same energy as the Karen video energy. It just drags
Mm-hmm.
in it.
I'm more
And
sensitive to it now. When I was younger, I really didn't have a lot of the sensitivity towards, which I think is normal, which is why teenagers are very dangerous, because a lot of times as a teenager, you might not know, that there's real suffering connected to those videos or like something like that, where, so it's kind of like you could be like more disconnected. I feel like people, especially, I think we're probably around the same age. Um,
you're
the old
47
int-
too?
you are not 47. There's like the old internet, there was such dark stuff on there.
It was
Oh my
wild.
God. It
People don't
was the
understand.
Wild West. And why was everyone that was in every chat room a creepy old guy that was trying to talk to 12-year-olds? It really was the old Wild
Jessica,
West.
could you please talk about the 144,000 people? And I have no idea what she's referring to. Do you?
Well, you did not finish the Apocalypse series then, did you? No.
You caught me. I'm a fraud.
Well, so the 144,000,
I
the
told you
video
it's
that I
in
have,
one the other.
it's the last video of the Apocalypse series. It basically, in the Bible, it talks about the 144,000. Basically, there's like 100 different places that this 144,000 comes up from, frequencies to
Oh,
distances to everything. And it's like this consistent number. It's a number in the Bible that they say that is going to be basically like the souls, the saints, the followers of Jesus. And then basically that is kind of mimicked in the Emerald Tablets and all of these different cultures around the world too. So what I personally believe it to be is that at this time of the awakening, of the earth shift, of all of that, the minimum number of people who need to reach Christ consciousness. So that's why they say, like, be with the Lamb or of the Lamb. I personally believe it's Christ consciousness as opposed to a man incarnating again onto earth into another physical body.
It wouldn't work.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, if Jesus is here, he's out there with a clipboard and you're not answering when he's trying to get some money for the kids.
I'm pretending that I just make eye contact with him.
Yeah, pretending that you don't have any cash.
Yeah.
But so I think when the minimum amount of, say, 144,000 people reach this level of Christ consciousness, that's what is able to create the dimensional shift for millions of people. Someone said that they tagged me in a video. I did see that. I did see the one about it, and it was about Arcturians, right? So a lot of people too, it's connected to star seeds. A lot of people who are into stuff like that, a lot of star seed information, it comes through. Someone is saying something that I can't say on here. I don't know about that one. Yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses. So Jehovah's Witnesses also used that same information to say that only 144,000 people were going to heaven and everyone else was screwed.
Fear. I think people don't realize how powerful of a weapon fear is. If you can convince somebody that they need to be afraid, you can get them to do anything. Only some of you are going to make it to heaven, so you better be good.
Yeah, and it is.
I like the idea of 144,000 being having the ability to gain entry for like a larger number of people, because I don't think like the light, or whatever kind of word you want to put on it, I don't think that the light is like you didn't figure it out. Bye. I think it's going to come down to, it's not just about indoctrination or anything like that. It's like, who are you? Have you been like, have you opened yourself up to learn? Have you opened yourself, like we were just talking about people coming out of being bullies and stuff like that. That's a really small that's a small way to put it, but it's hard to believe, I know, like being on TikTok, but there's a lot of innocence out there.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good people. I mean, there's so many, and most people are wanting to be good, and they just might not be healed enough to be able to do that for others.
Lights said, where do I find the Apocalypse series? That is on JK Ultra's page.
Yeah, that is my series. If you go to the playlists, and so if you guys are coming from from Max's page and have not seen my TikTok, you should start with the Apocalypse series, then watch the Earth Shift, then the Mandela, and then the Alien series, because the people who are watching it in order, it really is an unraveling of things. And when you watch it in order, it is, I believe, the right order to present the information.
And the Apocalypse series, like, literally had me multiple times a day, because I think you did. There was a couple days where you did post more than one video, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah,
or less than 4 hours apart, and so I'd catch up, and then like 4 hours later, I'd be like, well, maybe there's another one. Like I was actively going to your page trying to see if the new one was out. It is really good.
You know what's so great? I mean, honestly, like you said, you haven't been on TikTok very long. I haven't been on either. I started posting pretty much in January of this year, and like the comments like that like make my day when people are like, so where's the rest of it? Like,
yeah. Or 6 minutes after you post it, someone's like, when is part 2 coming out?
I know, and I'm like, I'm working on it. I put out the Apocalypse series pretty fast because it was like the demand was very high, and I also felt like I kind of gave more information than I needed to, so that I needed to quickly like get it out so that I could get to the Earth Shift, so I could tell people that there was at least hope for us all.
White pill.
Yeah. Oh, you people are so sweet. Someone said that they shared these videos with their coworkers. I
Guys,
love
I
it.
also just wanted to say, I know I've been really bad about reading comments, but this is my first live. I'll get better at it. Or not. Who knows?
So far, this is the first one that I've been able to really read some of the comments.
Someone, Ravy Baby says, I stalk her page for all the new videos. Same.
Oh, thank you.
Well, yeah, and I actually wasn't making TikToks when I discovered you, and it was you, and then I was watching a lot of mind hacking happiness, and then I don't know the person's TikTok, but I kept seeing one of those like channeled message TikToks, and every single one was like, just do it. The thing you're thinking about doing, just do it. It's gonna work this time. And I'm not gonna get into it, but there's been so many other things that I put years into, and so I'm very like skeptical of trying a new thing. And it just, I what clicked for me was seeing the way you did series, and I was like, that's because what can you really do with a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes? And you were just like nailing it. I was like, okay, like this is awesome. I want to get into this. So
Oh. So, first off, thank you.
yeah,
Second of all, what you were just saying is actually something that I've been talking about with my friends a lot is that, there's so many different things that you've invested time and energy into over the years. And that's how I feel too. I'm a writer. I've literally been writing for over 10 years. I've been working on this book somewhat about my life, somewhat about the social programming that created women. And it's kind of like Carrie Bradshaw with a tinfoil hat on type of
yeah,
thing. But I've been working on it for like 8 or 9 years. And so, like, I have a lot of things I've written in movies and TV shows and all of these things that I feel like I've been working so long on so many things and they haven't really like come to fruition.
yeah,
And then same thing with TikTok. I'm like, oh God, I've done it all. I've done all of it. And then I felt like everyone kept telling me to do the TikTok, to start posting. And then now that it's all happened very quickly and like it's just been like amazing and like people are amazing. I've had like 99% positive feedback. So then it's like all of those things that I worked on for the last 15 years of my life, I see them differently now. So I'm like, damn, I was
yeah. I
working on that
got
book
you here.
forever. Yeah, I'm like, I feel like I was working on that book forever, wondering like, how am I going to publish this? Who's going to read it? And now I'm like, wow, I have some people that are going to read this book now. So I feel like once something clicks, all the things you've been working on are that's the resource that you don't have because now you don't have the energy to put 10 years into the other things, you
No,
know so it's
you
like it
can't
does
afford to do
work
that anymore.
out.
And it's never been easier to like self-publish. And like my favorite book that I've read in a long time was, I don't know, are you familiar with Nick Hinton?
I don't think so.
Yeah, he's written a couple. God, I wish I had him in here. Um, he's a great writer, and he self-published it, and it's like he ships them all out himself and everything, and you like you would do numbers bigly. It'd be huge.
I'm
Um,
excited for it now.
I'm gonna
um
read this off real quick because DJ Crypto has been saying a lot of cool stuff. I've seen a lot of good comments, and he said the Vatican is withholding the truth. Yeah, yes,
is the Vatican holding the truth? Of course it is.
yeah. I mean, we they have like all the gold. They have like every major artifact that's been discovered that's not like under the Smithsonian is in the Vatican, and like the Vatican doesn't even know how much stuff they have. They don't even know
Yeah,
how much secrets they have anymore. It's
and it's many layers.
yeah,
It's not just like because some people claim to have been in the archives. I don't even think they've really been in the real archives.
yeah. Feeding it says if only we could get into their archives, and like you just said, I don't. I struggle to believe that like a worker in the Vatican right now is like, oh, the archives. Well, let's go. It's like I don't think
Yeah,
it works like that. I think there probably are physical also, because they need somewhere to put the big golden books and all the weird stuff they find all over in the tunnels and stuff.
So there's something interesting that I've heard come up a lot surrounding the Vatican, that there is a recording of a hologram under there. Now, there's former secret space program people who claim to have watched this. It's also in Behold a Pale Horse, and then also people say that they have it at the Vatican, that aliens showed a hologram of the crucifixion of Jesus, that and people don't know if it's the actual hologram of it or if they are just using a hologram to manipulate the people who they were showing it to. But it's interesting because that comes up a lot when people talk about what's under the Vatican, because apparently there is some groups of people who have seen this. So basically then they recorded the hologram. So there's a video of the hologram projection.
Mystic Cone said, could you do like astral to there? So like astral projection. Something tells me that that's probably not possible, but I don't know a lot about
So
that.
I believe that there is
Maybe remote view.
guards.
Yeah.
I believe that there's astral guards and stuff. So if you guys are ever trying to astral project to these highly secretive areas, first of
Be
all,
careful.
I don't suggest doing it. If you're going to, you're most likely going to track something back to you.
You're gonna have an insidious situation on your hands.
Yeah. And some people claim that they are able to do it and that they have to do the intention of protecting themselves. And they basically do an energetic exercise to kind of put themselves in like an invisible bubble. But you really don't know what you're dealing with, because most likely whatever is guarding those areas in the fourth and fifth and whatever dimensions it's the levels of protection. They're not human. So it's the levels of protection. They're not human. So they're more like how to find you and how to see you. Someone said gatekeepers. I've encountered them. Cool.
There's always that saying, like, be careful when you're looking into the void, or what's the saying? Don't be careful when you're looking into the abyss, that it doesn't look back into you. So I'd probably be careful with like any kind of astral projection to any like highly spiritually sensitive areas like that. But how are we ever going to find out? I think that's kind of one of the big lies that kind of will break some people out of the matrix a little bit, is like the Vatican is so much more insanely powerful than you think it is. And they have so much pull and sway over the world governments. Like most leaders answer to the Vatican, or whoever like the Vatican answers to. It's its own sovereign entity. And there's a lot of weirdness around. I know there's some stuff in your Apocalypse series about how it kind of seems like if they say they're Catholics, it's the opposite. If they say they're like these religious leaders, it's like, no, they're worshiping Satan. There's a lot of funky architecture in the Vatican, like snake stuff.
And I think that goes for most high up in many different religions. I feel like a lot of people who are claiming to be a lot of religions that are very public, that they don't really believe in the practices or the stuff in that religion.
And that's one of the weird things about like hate comments and disbelief comments. It's like, I understand that you don't believe in this, but the people that make sure you don't believe in this 100% believe in this. That's the only reason I know about it, is because there's paper trails for everything. There's video. I don't know if the internet wasn't an accident, but I don't know if it was meant to be like this big public widespread thing. It's much more controlled now. The internet is pretty much dead as we knew it in the beginning. So they definitely, the people in control and the people in power, maybe not every single one of them, but their bosses believe in the things that we're talking about.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people said that it glitched when we talked about the guardians of those areas. I got a bunch of people.
I did plug my phone in like 2 minutes ago, so hopefully it was that.
Did the internet get created by the same people as CERN? Yes. So it wasn't exactly CERN, but it was a CERN employee who independently created it.
And you can Google that. It's on
Because
Google.
Google's trustworthy. Yes.
But there's a reason why there's a statue of Shiva right outside of CERN. Like, and a lot of those employees at CERN, like, they put bizarre messaging out there. They put
That
bizarre
weird opera
esoteric
movie.
art.
Did you see that? The opera movie, they have an
Like
opera as a movie that is in CERN, and it is so creepy.
Yeah. There's no reason why like a scientific technology should be like celebrated in this like ritualistic, eyes wide shut, like.
And the thing is that's because the only way that we're going to make advances in science is by integrating consciousness and spirituality, because that's what aliens and stuff are doing. That's why they're doing things.
Someone said, what CERN? CERN is, I believe, the biggest large hadron collider in the world, and they're trying to get a better look at matter, but they smash particles together. And I think it's incredibly dangerous. I'm not a physicist, but it basically that they think that they can simulate black holes, and people that work with CERN or ex-employees, it's like not a secret that they're trying to look into different dimensions. That is one of their goals. And they're using quantum computers, which I'm not necessarily against, but it seems like a bad idea. And one of the like forerunners in quantum computing technology, I'm blanking on the name of the company. Oh, D-Wave Systems. I think their founders like literally said, basically how the computers work is they see every single possibility, and then the computers are so powerful that it's basically like looking into every possibility that could happen. So it's basically like looking into different dimensions. But if you're observing something, it becomes real. So it gets really messy with like CERN and quantum computers and stuff. It just doesn't seem like a great idea. And to people like me and maybe you, it's like, why do we need to do that? But it's because they're really interested in utilizing the natural world against us, and they don't care what it costs. They don't care who gets hurt. They have this like weird need for power, this hunger for answers. Maybe they're just as stuck as we are. I don't know. I don't feel stuck here, but maybe they do.
And then the one thing I want to add too is that CERN, is a collective of European countries. So it's 23 countries. Because a lot of times I've had sometimes people comment on like the Mandela effect stuff. They're like, well, why is everything only about America and stuff like
It's
that?
not.
Like, so CERN is 23 countries, including Israel, which is obviously not in Europe. So the rest of them are European countries, and then they have kind of like extended partnerships with Japan, United States, a bunch of other things. So it's not like this is just an individual corporation. This is a collective of all of the leading countries in the world that are dabbling in this stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier with we're like rivals or allies or enemies with all these superpower countries, but there's these really bizarre research projects and continents that we agree about, like, don't go there, and we'll all put money into making black holes, but we're all going to do the space race on our own. It's one thing more than likely.
The whole thing that we see of like space race is not at all the truth of what is really happening. It's so much more than that. So what's interesting is that we kind of, each individual person has, you know, their own frequency, their own energetic signature. And basically, everyone is kind of getting pulled to different parts of the world. So, like, sometimes people with like genetics that are maybe indigenous or from Africa, they're going to get pulled to certain places in the world for like vacation, even. They're going to go on vacation and they're going to end up going to see a pyramid. They're going to go to these artifacts because kind of like we're getting pulled to certain areas. So, ironically, for me, I have not traveled as much as I would like to, but I randomly, when I was 18 years old, ended up getting taken uh to Switzerland, to Geneva, Switzerland, and like literally before even knowing anything about CERN, this was around the time that they were starting that. So I'm like, it's so interesting that I always have like saw that with other people where they kind of get pulled to like, you know, a Mayan
Yeah.
ruin, or, you know, and they end up going to these places which they don't realize their frequency matches with. So they come to that ruin, their frequency matches with the frequency of the place, and they almost get like downloads that they're going to unlock later in their life.
You were too
That's
close.
how I feel
Fired it
about
off.
that's how I feel about CERN. I feel like I was brought to right above CERN when I was 18, and then it was later in my life that kind of those downloads like get unlocked.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like someone just said Sedona. Exactly. People get called, and Mount Shasta for me too. I love both of those places. And it's like we get called to these certain vortexes and certain energy centers of the world.
And the ancient, like, it's kind of hard to talk about because we don't know what happened, but the ancient peoples seem to really believe that too, because you find these extremely ancient sites with pyramids, and there's some variation, but like the way they're built is almost always the same, and there's always mixed language there. Like there's always Chinese and Egyptian and, you know,
Mm-hmm.
different languages like that. And it seems like they knew that there was these really important energy centers for whatever reason. And I also want to point out that if we all vanished tomorrow, like nothing that we have built as a human race like would be here in 500 years. So we see pyramids and, like, you know, rocky structures, and we're like, oh, so they lived here. And it's like, this is what's left over thousands of years later. So these sites that there's pyramids left over at, they're massive, and that is probably the foundation for whatever was there. And we, even like sci-fi artists and stuff, they'll, you know, draw an orb on top of a pyramid and be like, ooh, it was powering something. But there could have been like a plot, like someone could have landed a ship on the thing, or there could have been a city built on top of the pyramids. We have no idea what kind of materials they had access to.
The one thing that I always think of in relation to that, especially now that I'm kind of like, you know, doing this alien series and it involves a lot of like, you know, ancient Sumerian stuff. I always think about like what we see as these ruins are not what they looked like. So like whenever we see like things, especially movies that were supposed to take place during that time, it's like it's all hot and it's a desert, dry, and
We
everything
know
is
that's not how Earth
beige.
works.
And it's like most likely these areas like ancient Egypt were lush and glorious, and they probably had a ton of color and plants, and even like the, you know, what we're seeing of like Rome and all of these things, most likely it's like the paint and stuff has washed off. But it's
Yeah.
like I feel like these things were actually nothing like they look today. That they
Yeah.
were lush, they had water, they had plants, they had different drawings and different things that are now like washed away.
And there's so many of these civilizations, like the Greeks that we think of, they moved into those ruins. Like that,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't build those. And I know that that's not like the main line history that doesn't get pointed out, but it's written about multiple times by them. And then I believe it's the Aztecs, like when they came in contact with Europeans for the first time, they were like, oh, we didn't build this amazing city. No, there were giants here and they were super friendly. So we just like slaughtered them because they were like really nice and they didn't see us as threats. So we killed them, kept some for servants, and took over. And like someone commented about the Sphinx, how that's not what it looked like. It had like more than likely it had a much bigger head. It was some other kind of animal. And it's the same thing with the ancient Egyptians, that they like a lot of those structures were there when they got there.
So one of the things that comes up in these Pleiadian channeled books that I find very interesting is they talk about the concept that some of our ancient history that we study is not ancient. It's actually from the future, and we're seeing the old version of it. So it's a very interesting concept. So they talk about a lot of the things that we believe to be ancient history is actually timeline manipulation of our future.
That's so would it be like a like time is circular thing, or is it like quantum
It is
entanglement?
time is circular, and there's also things doing things on purpose to make people believe that this is where our history came from.
I also want to make the point that it would be really convenient if, like, how Earth's history went is that there were like cavemen and Neanderthals, and it's been a straight, like, slow and steady line up to us, the obvious, most advanced people that have ever been. It's like we kind of have a lot of information that that's not true, and that like our technology is cute compared to like what they would have had to have to make that happen. And there's mainline archaeologists that will say we don't have tools to do this. We don't have tools to etch into stone like this. We could never do this. Like somehow they melted it with laser
This
light.
is why you know that there's a grand cover up, because even the scholars are like, well, we know there's no explanation, but I'm sure they were very primitive.
Well, they had slaves, so you know.
Yeah, because that figures, that just makes everything happen magically. Like, it makes no sense.
And then there's a lot of the architecture that just doesn't look like it is human sized. Like they're grand buildings and everything, but like
and then have you got down the Tartarian rabbit hole?
Yeah, I was kind of hinting towards that, because for me that's like, it's probably not the most outlandish thing that I've read or anything like that, but it's the one I catch myself wanting that to be the case, because it would just really tidy up the timeline. It'd be like, and that's what happened. But I'm very hesitant around things that make history too too convenient. And you know, I love sci-fi, so of course I'm like, of course they have, you know, ships and lasers and stuff. And
well, of course.
Yeah. But I do think that there's like a strange, you use a term, I think you use the term residue. And I think that there's a lot of historical and archaeological residue of massive events happening like rather recently in the grand scheme of things, like within the last couple 100 years. And like we were talking about, it just doesn't take that long, maybe, you know, 5 to 25 years to completely wipe an event from happening. We see it happen all the time.
It's true.
You and I talk about this in private. We know things about other countries that they don't even have words for. And what do we not know about our country? So it's happening right now and we wouldn't know it. Sorry, go ahead.
So have you looked into this? Now, this is not a conspiracy that I get into. One of my friends is really into it and sends me stuff all the time. And I find it very compelling. I just haven't gone down the rabbit hole myself. It's only been the information that's been presented. So it's about the Tartarians, about the giant people who were allegedly living on Earth. So there's this theory that there was these giants on Earth, and then obviously native people who were African, basically, but not just only from Africa, because according to this theory, Africans are not only from Africa; they were from the whole entire planet. And we're being told that they were only from Africa.
Right.
So there was giants and Africans, and then another type of group of people. And basically, around the 1500s, around after the initial plague, and then like a second plague, that's when allegedly the maps were changed. So when you see maps from like 1560 and
Yeah.
then 1595, that's when we switched to being a globe, and the other stuff was kind of more of like, you know, in the center was the hole that was going into the inner earth, and
Yeah.
then there's all this land around it, and then after that, so people kind of link
Almost like a
those,
hive.
they link those plagues with the complete change of what our world and reality looks like. And that's when they switched, the calendar switched around that time, the globe switched around that time, the maps, all the information that we have about the history. There was no more giants really talked about, but there's still some remnants of giants, because we even have pictures from the 1800s of some people that were like 7, 8 feet tall. So
Just to make this
that's
a little
another
more,
theory.
just to make, that's a really big idea, just to make that a little more bite-sized and like relevant to people right now. Right now, we're talking about getting rid of daylight savings time, which I know that doesn't seem like a huge deal, but like we base our entire like structure of our the hour, the day, the week, the month, and over a long period of time, that is going to change how we measured a certain amount of time,
Mm-hmm.
and the implications kind of like snowball really quickly. And that's just one of those things, like if that goes through, the term daylight savings will probably be known for another like 100 years, but within 25 it'll mean nothing to people. It'll be
Mm-hmm.
what do you mean you used to have it get dark earlier on purpose? Doesn't make any sense. So that's all it takes is like a low level administrative decision, and it's like, oh, okay, that's over. Time's different now.
And it's true, because even with stuff that's going on in the world right now, we see that in a time of chaos, how easy it is to change big things that would be difficult to change if it wasn't. So it's interesting, you know,
Like during
that
a
there's
plague,
some evidence.
a lot of old people are going to die, and there's going to be an entire generation wiped out that's not going to remember it used to be different.
Yeah. And I mean, it's already like, you know, from the time that we were younger was very different. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, the world has changed so much that there's already things that, like, you know, I see sometimes those videos like millennial parents who have you know, kids that are around like 12, 13. Those, like, they'll be telling kids about stuff that we did at their age, and it's like completely out there. Like,
Yeah.
why would anyone do that? Like the explaining collect calls, you know,
So
like it's ridiculous. I saw a
house
video of
phone.
someone explaining a collect call to their kid, and I was like, wow, like that does sound ridiculous.
Nikola Tesla wanted to put, someone's bringing up, I keep seeing 369 theory, talk about 369, and I see a lot about Nikola Tesla. That's an amazing topic, and that's a deep rabbit hole. I personally think like that was like this big linchpin in time. It's like Nikola Tesla or Edison, and one of them may or may not have had like a few more psychological or like psychopathic tendencies, because
Exactly.
you know anything about Edison, like I'm not saying he never invented things, but he had like an army of inventors, and
Hmm.
everything that Nikola Tesla came up with was extremely powerful, but a lot of it was free energy, and we can't be having that. We all know that. Free energy destroys this system. And so
Yeah.
he was trying to push like a system ruining technology pretty early in the system's success. Like that time period was huge because we were just starting to like turn and burn all the oil and get all the big industries up and running. And the last thing, we grew our country off all of those commodities. So like the last thing that they wanted was something that was technically free. So personally, I think everything would be different if
Oh yeah, like
it wasn't black.
completely different. You know, there's also allegedly some scientists who work for the government, who work in these underground facilities that are so old that they actually personally knew Nikola Tesla because they have these technologies to stop aging. Or maybe they're cloning and putting themselves back into younger bodies. I don't know. But that's what I hear.
I know it's that cloning is one of those things that you like look into and you're like, yeah, they can do it. But what I don't believe, I have a really hard time like figuring out the transfer of consciousness because
Oh, okay.
I don't.
So the transfer of consciousness has already been an alien technology forever because that's what is used in the gray system. So the grays, because they use artificial bodies and because they also split their consciousness sometimes into the multiple artificial bodies, they already know how to, like in Black Mirror, it's like everything that's like in Black Mirror, you know, like
Yeah.
basically being able to extract consciousness from something without it dying. So they taught our government that technology. And I was just last night reading some Keepers of the Garden by Dolores Cannon. And in this one chapter, the guy is going through a regression of an abduction. And in his abduction, he's kind of saying, like, wait, I feel like I'm inside of a ball. And then he's like, they're doing stuff to my body, but I can't feel it. I feel like I'm outside of my body. So she starts asking questions. And basically, he says that he feels like he's in a container. And so she asks, she's like, well, if consciousness is not matter, how could you put it in a container? And they said that the word container is the closest thing that they can get, but it's not a container. They say a container doesn't have to be a physical thing. So basically, what they can do is contain energy by manipulating energy. So they can take consciousness into a container, but not a physical container. It's a container made of a different frequency, which can house it. And they can keep it in this consciousness in this container until they're ready to put it into something else.
That's terrifying. And it makes the kind of transhumanist agenda make a lot more sense because I've always felt like that is so like arrogant and short-sighted because I'm like, you're really taking a leap there if you are like, okay, take me out and put me in a new body because I think that I have an aversion to that because
there's already clones. There's probably clones of us. Like there's clones of people of stolen DNA.
Yeah, well, like DNA, like retention, getting our DNA is a ghost industry and it's massive. And there's of course like the 23andMe companies like that, but you give your DNA away so much and most of the time they don't have to ask for it because you're there for a service, like you're there for a checkup. They don't just like take your blood and then not log it into a system. Your DNA is everywhere, and just like any other service, they sell it. They sell anything that you didn't.
Just like the DMV sells our information. The DMV is legally allowed to sell your information, and that's why you get so many phone calls. You think that blood banks and all of this stuff don't do the same thing?
And there's, a certain test that a large part of the world had to take multiple times over and over and over again over the last couple of years, and those had to be, oh, I know there was a rapid one, but those had to be processed at huge centers. And not just the government, but also like private corporations have these massive, like quadruple the size of Costco buildings all over the world. But it's like in like Nebraska and South Dakota, they have these huge data processing centers, and it's just constantly compiling all of your information. And we don't, when I was a little kid, they were talking about, we can clone this animal, but we don't know if it's right, and we're going to argue about it in public, which means that they're already doing it. So there could, and probably is, there could be, you know, adult age clones walking around just purely from the technology at that point, which it was
For
probably
sure.
way at that point.
For sure.
Do you
There's
remember in the early
also
2000s, they were like, we're going to clone a woolly mammoth. And then
yes,
just
and
now,
also remember the sheep when we were
yeah,
younger, the sheep that they were cloning.
Dolly
Um,
called.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a couple different types of clones too. So there's kind of like three main types of clones that I know of. The first type is kind of a half android type of thing, which kind of like, I know you watch Westworld, kind of like in that first season where it's kind of like robot with organic
Yeah, it's
material.
cheaper to make more like humans.
Yeah, and then exactly,
Yeah.
it gets cheaper over time to just create them as humans because the stuff that they use for the technological stuff is expensive. So there's clones that are partially robotic. There's clones that are fully human. And then this third type of clone is a look-alike clone. So these are people who are so extremely close to the person that they want cloned that sometimes they will kidnap the person or take the person and then basically MK Ultra them or possibly put the consciousness inside that person. And then this is where more of the body double thing is, because, you know, you see this come up a lot in a lot of conspiracies about body doubles and things like that. And those are allegedly just lookalikes who've been MK Ultra'd.
That would make more sense because we know that the technology is always way more advanced. They say, I think the saying is like 20 years, but I think it's probably closer to 60. It's
Oh,
hard to,
yeah.
but it would make sense that if they were saying they could clone a sheep in the mid 90s or right at the beginning of the 2000s, that they could probably just really successfully clone certain humans. Like I'm sure it's easier for some people to be cloned than others based on your DNA or whatever. But it makes sense if they could do that, then that now they have the like consciousness transfer like down pat. And if you've seen it in movies, that's just quantum like idea garbage to get in your way of thinking something can be true, because it's like, oh, cloning, that's just sci-fi, that's movies. But they do that a lot, especially with like headlines and news stories. They'll intentionally obfuscate the truth by putting a whole bunch of it out there in the form of like bullshit. So that's
kind of like someone commented about the Jordan Peele movie, Us. That movie, I loved it when I saw it because that was exactly what I thought of when I watched that movie, was that they take people's DNA and are cloning them. And these are not like, even though, you know, we'll say like the government, it's not really the government. It's the corporations that are getting funded by, because then they can basically do whatever they want when they're a private corporation who receives funding.
But the corporate people also need to understand the corporations own the government. And
oh yeah, and the people just need to look up at like the top 4 organizations that create all of the weapons for war. Those are the people who are doing these things.
And we just talked about a certain card game, and in your video you talked about how his office got raided, but it got raided before the Illuminati,
before the game came out.
But they raided it during like after their cyberpunk game came out. And the idea behind most cyberpunk work is like, okay, the corporations are in charge and they own and run everything. And so it kind of like it's a huge coincidence, I guess, that like this guy was working on this big cyberpunk project in the early 90s and then got raided by the FBI. I think that's why we're having such a hard time understanding so much of what's going on as a people, because it's like a 200, 300 year plan, and we're like 280 years into it or something. It's impossible to catch up as a society, especially when we're constantly
Yeah.
getting our videos muted and taken down.
But it's inevitable.
Yeah.
The awakening is inevitable. It has already happened. So there's no stopping it as much as they try to slow it down.
That's the one thing that like really rings true. It's hard to explain, but there's just certain things that you learn about and it just feels right. It just like it just flows through and you're like, yeah, I think that's what's happening. And that can be good or bad, just that intuition. I have no idea where intuition comes from, but it's something we don't understand. It's like consciousness. And I get that intuition that the only thing that worries me, and like I said, don't be scared, but the only thing that worries me is the length of the dark night we have to go through before we do like raise our consciousness. But it does absolutely seem inevitable that it's going to happen. It seems like they know that too. And
yeah, for sure. Which is why the pushback towards everything is so hard right now, because it's inevitable. And like for me, as someone who has always been weird with this stuff, I know how to look normal, but I used to not even look normal. So like, now, because I've kind of always been that person, the amount of people who like reach out to me just like as friends over the years, they're like, you know what? I thought you were kind of crazy years ago talking about this stuff, but now, and it's like so many people, a lot of people are not comfortable talking about it yet, but in private, the things that people tell me that they've experienced or seen or whatever, it's like, I know it's inevitable. It's people are waking up and the skeptics are getting scared. So they're just lashing out harder.
Someone, Death 13 commented, "How do I know y'all don't work for the government? I'm so broke. They're not paying well."
Well, I don't know if the government pays that well.
They don't. Yeah. I'm also seeing a lot of good ideas about the clones. Someone commented resonates, which was a word I was absolutely struggling to find. Somebody said, or DJ Crypto again, the celebrities that don't comply get killed or cloned, so they benefit from their income to support it. I think it's about way more than income. I think it's much more about influence and whatever weird spells they get into.
It depends on the person, because there's definitely a lot of people who they kind of go out into obscurity and they don't make music anymore or whatever. And then there's some people who, maybe like try and get stopped.
DJ Crypto also followed that up with Dave Chappelle, which is a very interesting story.
Yeah, Dave Chappelle is interesting. I do like Dave Chappelle. I don't think that he's evil.
I think you're allowed to get ripped if you want to get ripped. I think you're allowed to put on some muscle. I think you're allowed to go to Africa and lift weights for a few years and not be a clone.
Yeah, I think that he basically has one foot in and one foot out, because he knows that part of his purpose is he's kind of like, a bit of a modern prophet, like he's saying some of the most profound stuff that people are, talking about publicly. So yeah, I feel like he kind of knows, even like, look, the stuff that we talk about, we have to still talk about it on TikTok, because that's how you reach people. I think that there's always a balance with that.
He's an absolute master at like kind of opening your eyes to certain things with subtext, and like during his act teaching you how to read between his lines, and then like laying down some like scary stuff on you and hoping that you are awake enough to hear it. Do either of you know the Tibetan Book of the Dead?
Yes. So the Tibetan Book of the Dead lines up very closely with Journey of Souls by Michael Newton, a lot of the stuff that Dolores Cannon talked about, a lot of the stuff that comes up in regressive hypnosis about past lives, journeying from this world back to the spirit world, is very similar to the stuff in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And they also talk about these like creators, which gets talked about a lot in the alien and the new age movements and stuff, where they kind of talk about like people who go to certain planets and have certain skills of, like, say they're good at manipulating minerals, so they'll manipulate the minerals for thousands of years to be able to create the terrain, and then someone else is good at something else. And so it's interesting that there's a lot of stuff in the Tibetan Book of the Dead that lines up with stuff that comes up in hypnosis of crossing over to the other side, and people's near-death experiences, and a lot of alien stuff. It's really interesting.
I have
And
to.
I think it's narrated by Richard Gere, if anyone wants to listen to the audiobook.
That's amazing, Richard Gere. That's what he's doing.
Yeah,
now?
I'm pretty sure he's the narrator.
He's like,
of the audiobook.
Like, I'm gonna make 6 movies and then go do audiobooks. I'm gonna be a good
Yeah.
star. Someone said, or DJ Crypto once again with it. Jim Carrey almost cracked. Jim Carrey cracked. He didn't almost crack. He definitely cracked. It makes you wonder, like, what do historians and like archaeologists think the Tibetans were? Do they think they were just like writing that stuff for fun? Like,
I think
obviously
that
they had really intense beliefs if those ideas made it this far.
And I think that, you know, so the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it was kind of a manual for dying for monks. So when monks at this higher level of consciousness, when they die and cross through, it was kind of a guide for them at higher consciousness of how to navigate the other side, because they're going to have more awareness than a regular person. And they talk about these kind of like demon looking things that, like, when you're crossing through, especially at a higher consciousness, when you're crossing through, which this doesn't come up in any of the regressive hypnosis stuff, but they talk about like kind of like people seeing like devils and monsters and stuff on the way to the light. And they explain to like not get frightened by these things, because these things are your projections of your inner self, so that none of these demons or any of these things are real. These are literally, you have to remember that when you're crossing, these are your projections of your own fears.
Kind of like
I always found that interesting.
Kind of like your life passing before your eyes.
Yeah, like, and I guess if you're at such a high level of consciousness, you're getting presented with a much harder version of that.
And we're like constantly removed, like we're all desensitized to death, but our own mortality, we are so protected from thinking about that, even though we're in like a really bad place with like personal health. It's extremely expensive and extremely hard to be healthy, and so we just try our best not to even think about death anymore. I think that's kind of a problem, and it's probably where people get this idea of like, well, it's because they're recycling our souls. I know that you don't really touch on that too much, but
it's going to come up, and I just have to lay some groundwork first before.
It just seems like a beautiful idea to be looking at death like something to plan for and to be ready for. And like, you know, the first line in that book is probably "Don't freak out." Don't freak out. What's your opinions on shifting? I personally think it's just lucid dreaming. I think that there's been some kind of bizarre temporal shift of some kind. I think there's too much information out there about CERN and the Mandela effect has taken over. I'm sure a huge part of the Mandela effect is about entertainment at this point. I get that. It's obvious. There's some great TikTok videos out there of people with old phones, super entertaining. But like,
yeah, those ones I feel like are probably edited, even though I enjoy them.
That's great, but those are the kind of things that wouldn't make it on.
Because I did actually ask someone too who is basically can create those type of videos if he
Yeah.
thought that that was edited, and he said for sure.
Yeah.
So I did, but I still find it interesting. But we're not going to shift through timelines in that type of way right in front of your eyes like that, you know? But there is like timeline shifting and stuff that does happen, you know? So I had this weird thing because based off of something that I read on Reddit, there was this guy on Reddit who said he kept like shifting between two timelines, and that basically his air condition has like a little dot on it, and some days it doesn't have the dot and some days it does, and he's been trying to figure out which timeline he is. And so I read that like a long time ago, and it's been in my mind. So this is weird, but I had a dead spider on my ceiling, and so I was like, some days it would be there and some days it wouldn't, and I was like, oh, maybe he wasn't dead, maybe he left, and then he would be back there dead in like 2 days, and I'm like, what the, how is it back? And I never removed it, it's gone now.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, so I wonder if there is small glitches or like kind of shifting between two lines, if we are seeing sometimes small glitches that only impact us, or you know, if we're not really able to see the timelines in that way.
I don't think that's a name, but Darrett said, how many people are actively working against the shift? I don't know how many people, but I just know that the power's answer to anything that happens naturally is to try to simulate it with technology, and it's never great for us. So I think that if there's anything crazy going on at CERN, which I do believe there is, I think that that is some kind of twisted version of a natural process that happens over a long period of time. And of course, we just like, you know, we tried to look through a window and we kicked down a door. It just happened. So I don't know if there's people actively working against like something like against us. They're definitely acting against people like waking up or the awakening or the consciousness raising. But I think the really dangerous thing is just the hubris of like, oh, the thing our universe is made out of, let's rip a hole in it.
Yeah.
So,
but that's kind of like what people do. Like, I mean, you look at little kids, and like little boys especially, they want to break things, like just to see how it works,
see what's
you
going
know,
on
and
inside.
watch at like that young level. And so I saw this interview on Gaia. It was between Billy Carson and George Norrie, and Billy Carson was talking about how he believes that he kind of said that like he feels like God basically is, you know, how a lot of people assign to the belief that God is all of everything, all of consciousness, all of creation, everything. We're all tiny little fractals of God, and we're experiencing life because this is God experiencing himself to expand. Now, Billy Carson says he believes in that. However, he feels that the creator is not inside, that the creator is outside looking at it almost like an ant farm. And so George Norrie added this great perspective that he's like, oh, wow, you know, I had an ant farm when I was a kid. And then he's like, and for some reason, I would always shake it to completely destroy it to see how quickly they could rebuild their ant farm. And they would always rebuild it the same way. And I was like, damn, like that's kind of like what's happened in our reality, you know, is that like we've rebuilt the same civilization again and again and again, no matter how many times someone shakes the ant farm.
I think it has different names. I think it looks different. There's like certain shows, I love them because they're really entertaining, but at the same time it's like it just feels like it has something to do with something I'm interested in the real world. One of them is Westworld, but the other one is Raised by Wolves, and it's about these Mithraic people, which was like a religion, but Christianity kind of just like beat it out, but they're like super similar. And it's almost like whatever the ultimate, you know, omnipotent being is, like, shakes us up, destroys everything, you know, with the liquefit. What is that thing that happens when the mud basically like liquefies and just goes all over everything? Everything gets destroyed, and then we rebuild, and it looks different, but it's always the same kind of like this yearning for knowledge and to wake up and to be peaceful and to like we're supposed to explore. And there's a lot of our physical world we haven't explored, but we're supposed to be out there like in the astral planes and like finding out about our spirituality. And there's that yearning and there's that deep desire to crush that yearning and just keep control and keep balance. And that always leads to another shakeup. And maybe the awakening or the light is just knowing that that shakeup is going to come and being spiritually prepared for it, so that when society comes back, you can further some of that sacred knowledge that you've attained, which I don't claim to have any of, but I feel like you definitely do. Someone said, how many times do you think we humans have rebuilt? Several. I mean,
Well, they are saying that this is our seventh time of like a full thing.
yeah, start to
Because
finish.
doesn't it say that in the Bible too? It says that in a lot of texts that this has happened like 7 times before the flood.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone's saying the root races. Yeah, they say that there's like 7 root races, and we're now crossing into the 7th one. And I think that this one doesn't have a name yet because we're in the process of it, if I remember correctly.
Someone said, Thucky said, we could be due for, I know that sounded bad. We could be due for another massive event, another Younger Dryas event, a new epoch. The thing about that is there are like huge, massive solar flares that were apparently like way over schedule for. Like there's these huge earthquakes that are just going to happen any minute. There's like the magnetic poles. There's the ice caps melting. I'm not particularly worried about that one so much, but there's all these different things that were like 20,000 years past where it was supposed to happen. And
the earth shift, the last time there was a massive pole shift. Our pole is moving, but a full crust shift, they're saying that we're like exactly hundreds of thousands of years overdue. But that just goes to show that they don't really know anything about time. Our concept of how long ago some things were, I think, is not accurate.
Yeah. Someone brought up the Bhagavad Gita. I'm pretty limited on that, but I know one of the ideas in that is another idea that comes up in a lot of different ancient texts and current ideas, which is like, if you can accept that like what we're in right now is not forever, and if you can like learn to let that go and let go of yourself, like I don't think you ever truly lose yourself, but I think it's really important for us to be able to let go of what's going on in our day-to-day and our personal desires, and just come back to that place of like understanding other people. And just ego death is very important.
So someone's saying that this is all clearly written in the Kabbalah, which I want to read more into. You know, I read excerpts here and there because it gets like kind of intertwined with all of these topics. But I really want to I want like a good Kabbalah resource that's like easy to digest, because, you know, sometimes when I read the more like the actual texts, it's a little hard to process. But I know, because even like with this video that I was just posted about the Garden of Eden and stuff, even like that story of the Garden of Eden, when it's looking at the Kabbalah texts, they talk about Adam and Eve basically being one person, and that like, this is my understanding of at least what I read, is that like it's one person who their feminine and masculine got split into two and they became like half. And the same thing too with us talking about like the concept of God being we're all parts of God. I also know of that being in the Kabbalah too. But I'm like, if anyone knows like of like a good person to look into who's like really good at like maybe like a rabbi or someone who's good at breaking down this the Kabbalah. Have you felt the Holy Spirit, JK Ultra? I don't believe so. I did do a confirmation in the Catholic Church. I did not feel the Holy Spirit. I'm sorry.
I was raised Christian, and but if I got interested in the Bible now, I feel like there'd be no way that I could ever make it through the Bible without like some kind of like other text to kind of explain what I was reading, because it's all been translated so many times. And yeah, it's those ideas like coming into a new like holy book like that. It's really helpful to have somebody else that's gone over it for their entire life or something.
Oh, okay, so
Getting a lot of questions about Nibiru, which I just don't know that much about. I know it's like a planet that's supposed to just show up, but
yeah, so it's basically, I mean, from what I know, it's not my like expertise of the alien stuff, but allegedly, there was another solar system that was close to ours that got messed up by some type of asteroid or something, and basically one of their planets or two of their planets or something got sucked into our solar system's orbit. So like say if our solar system is all like kind of this way, Nibiru is coming like this way. So like it's totally out of our being able to see it because it's rotating in a different direction. Right. And they say that it's like 30,000 years before it passes through. And they say that that might be the reason that caused some of the floods, because when it passes through, it messes up the gravitational pull, and that could cause one of the pole shifts.
I think this one's important. Death 13 commented, "What exactly am I supposed to do with this info? Woke without a purpose, government just wants you distracted." That's definitely one way to look at it, but I get that question a lot, like, what's your point? And I think my point is just that, like, I do think that it's important to know that, like, the authority that you're looking towards for guidance and protection, they don't care about you. And the only thing that they care about is like their bottom line. It's corporations own the government. It's been like that for a long time. So if you believe something blindly, then you'll just follow that person right off a cliff, and they'll still be up on the cliff, like lighting their cigar with $100 bill while you fall off the cliff. So a lot of it is entertaining to me, and a lot of it, like we were talking about earlier, just resonates, and it seems like important for it to be remembered. But at the same time, I think I don't have a goal for my content, but I think it's very frustrating to see intelligent people do like really unintelligent things and be hateful, because someone also commented, isn't it strange how all religions are so similar? But there's also a lot of research done that like religion is the easiest thing to divide people on, and the next one is race. The next one right after religion is race. But all our religions are so similar. It's just
and politics, because politics is the new religion.
Of course, yeah.
It replaced religion.
So I mean, I know that
as far as what I think to do with the information, because I do get that question as well. People are like, well, I just watched all your videos. What am I supposed to do with this? And it's like, okay, acknowledge that probably everything you know could be a lie, including our reality itself, including time, including everything, all the laws of physics. Everything that we're told is an absolute fact could possibly have been wrong or purposely wrong to manipulate people. And then after you get past that idea, then you have to go through a little bit of the darkness of why would anything or anyone want to ever do this, and why would something be so dark and so evil. Then you get past that and get to the point where you're like, okay, evil also has a purpose.
Yeah.
So evil is a teacher. And so you get past these points of like, okay, everything's a lie. Okay, everything's evil. Okay, evil is about learning. What do I learn? What do I learn? What do I learn? To a point where you can eventually be like, now I have understanding, but I'm not emotionally impacted.
Mm-hmm.
And I can have compassion for everything. Compassion for the people who are not awake, people for the ones who are awake, compassion for the people who are trying to stop people from waking up because they're obviously messed up too and got problems of their own. And it's like, so then when you could just get to a point of acceptance and understanding, but you have to go through all of the scary, messed up, horrible, how could they, before you can get there.
And one of the things I've learned, it's been true over and over again, is like there's like this really light, thin curtain of media all around us at all times. And it's like the most censored, like hated, like hate speech things that you just like, you pull the curtain back a little bit, and it's not even like deep knowledge or anything. It's like people that are experts in their field that are still working today are like, oh yeah, that's not how that works, and it's like this. So like that first level of like red pill or whatever you want to call it, it's not like misinformation. It's not even labeled as misinformation. It's right there for you to see. All you have to do is just like pull back that curtain a little bit. And I'm not saying everybody needs to do that, but it really isn't that hidden. Some ideas are hidden, but a lot of information is right there. They don't.
And it is like the Wizard of Oz, where it's like this, you know, big, powerful head, you know, floating. And really, it's just like some little guy behind the curtain, you know? And it's like, really, when there is the kind of this big story of what's happening, and you can kind of see behind it and see the core is a lot of just like, you know.
And who's operating it? It's this big, booming voice of authority. And when they pull back that curtain, literally, it's a scared little man. And he's a liar. He's a liar. He's scared of them. He's, when it comes down to it, he's just as lost as they are. So like, that's why I think it's important, is because we look at authority figures like they're philosopher kings. It's like, no, they're just people that make their money like off of you, controlling you. Everything you do is taxed. And that's, I mean, it's not a big secret.
It's true. Someone's asking, are we in a matrix or in reincarnation? Both. We are in both.
Yeah, I mean, I love the simulation idea and stuff, but that's kind of one of those like, there's no way to tell if we're in base reality, and it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, but there has to be a certain belief that it's not what we're told in order for us to shift it and change it. So in order to shift the planet, to shift the dimensions and all of that, you do have to completely release the idea of what this reality is that we've been told. So which they haven't done a good job of telling us what it is anyway.
No. I think
so it's pretty easy to at least say that they are not necessarily right.
I think I say it doesn't matter because I just like don't believe that it is what they say it is. That's it. I just don't believe that what's happening is what they're saying is happening. I know in my soul that that's incorrect. And I think most of the people that are telling us that now believe it because it's been 200 or 300 years or whatever. But I just know that it isn't what they're saying it is. And we also know that, like, to a certain extent, it is holographic. It is light and vibration and sound. So
Wow, that was really nice. Thank you for that. Someone that sent that. That was really nice. um, yeah. Well, we've been going for almost 3 hours. Let's see if there's any important questions that people need to ask before we wrap up. This is also going to be on YouTube if you missed parts of it and want to see the beginning. How exactly will the transition happen? What will happen to those who don't go to the fifth dimension?
They're gonna burn in hell. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, the rapture. But no, actually, we can't know 100%. What has been gathered through all of this information is that there's going to be the people who are working towards the shift are going to know it's happened because they're going to consciously have been aware. They're going to be working toward it. And when it happens, they're going to know. Millions of other people who are not the ones that were working towards it are going to just wake up and kind of feel a little different. And many of them are not going to know that anything has happened. Those were the people that are at the high enough frequency to make the shift with, say, the 144,000 do it. The rest of the people shift with them, kids and stuff like that. Kids are fine. Animals are fine. Like, they're not going to need to consciously realize we went to a different dimension on the same planet. However, the people, everyone's soul decided already, your soul already knows whether you're going or not. And you've already made the choice. The people who chose not to go, that is their choice. And they will just probably experience the ending of this world as we know it. And possibly stay for some of that. But I think a lot of their souls are going to leave before anything bad even really goes down.
Just to play the devil's advocate here, it also, like, one of the ways I've interpreted to myself, because even if you are willing to go and to learn and to sacrifice and to just let go and to ascend, it's still scary thinking about that transition. And so on a more mundane level, it might manifest as something as mundane as, like, the people that transition become the people, like the people that attain power over the different world governments and stuff have ascended, and so we're just being led in a better direction from like the people that didn't shift, if you want to call it that. It just seems like, oh, things are just getting better. Things are getting better. Like, kind of seems like we're not trying to, like, kill each other for resources anymore, and we're not trying to, like, imprison literally as many people as we can. I don't think that it's going to be like that. I think it will be more of like we'll be able to perceive it when it happens, but it might not be that crazy. It might not be an apocalypse.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people will probably not experience this whole apocalyptic situation. A lot of people might not experience it at all and will just go on and live the life that they've been dreaming of.
I want to answer this question just because it's a little worrisome to me. What should I believe / trust? How do you know it benefits you? You just have to do some soul searching, and, like, I think deep down everybody knows good for them and the people around them. I have heard that theory that some people don't have like a voice in their head, like they don't think like that, but that's how I think. I hear myself tell myself, hey, don't do that. Like, don't get big and loud and angry about something. Like, just let it go, because it's so much easier to let it go, and you hate how you feel when you don't let it go. And I think you just, like, have to follow that voice around. And I know not everybody has the same intuition for things like that, but I think for the most part we know the difference between good and bad. That's a fundamental thing that we're all born with. So I would be skeptical. It's healthy to be skeptical because you don't want to just be led off a cliff, like I said. But I think you should be open to new information. I think that's why we're kind of in the predicament that we're in right now, is because nobody wants to hear anything that's not on the TV.
And I think, like what you said, is that, you have to see what resonates with you.
Yeah.
If it doesn't resonate with you, then it might just not be a part of your journey in this life. So like, I personally do a lot by what resonates with me.
Hmm.
I'm good at being like reading through stuff and seeing what is adding up and what isn't adding up. And if something's not adding up for me, I feel that the information has been somehow changed. Not saying that it's even purely false or purely
Yeah.
true. Something's been changed.
Yep.
But some people don't necessarily have that instinct because maybe they have been told what to believe and they haven't discovered for themselves. So I feel like explore it all, see what's
Yeah.
interesting, check out all the different religions and see what sparks some excitement in you when you're reading it, like, wow, this seems like it.
Yeah, and I think it's important to keep in mind that like you can be um sad or lonely or in a period of your life that doesn't seem to make much sense for like how hard you've worked or how you've treated people. Like you could treat people well for your entire life and still be in like a dark night of the soul and kind of not knowing why you're there. But that's kind of part of doing what feels right, is like being willing to like go through hard times. I think you kind of have to work for it too. You have to work for that like inner compass to kind of figure it out.
It's true. And your soul already knows.
Yeah.
You already have the whole history of everything that has happened on this planet, all the other planets, everything. It's already inside of your soul. It's already inside of your DNA. It's encoded in this matrix that we're in. So the answers are all around you. You just have to be able to feel like what you're unlocking. And
Yeah.
I do suggest just reading a lot of different sources and seeing who resonates.
I'm think I'm really bad about this because I like enjoy like horror and sci-fi so much, but I'm like really not trying to come at this from like a doom and gloom place. That's not how I feel. I feel like life is hard for a lot of people right now, and um we're like distracted so intentionally that we don't think about how bad things are for so many people. But I think that it's like that because it's like the last gasp of like this dying thing that is our system, whatever controls it. And I think it's just important to keep. I saw someone say in the chat, I think it said, see yourself in everyone else, and just
Mm-hmm.
try to just love people no matter how annoying it is. Just love them, walk away, it's fine. But yeah, look, I have looked into and enjoyed so many theories that I just straight up don't believe. But like, if and I do believe that there's large interconnected chasms within the earth, but I like went down a beautiful path when I started investigating the inner earth, like a religious, like spiritual path that I did not expect. And I had multiple like beautiful encounters with like random people in the street, like tied to like Buddhism and stuff. So just keep educating yourself and keep being interested, and cool stuff will happen. But you don't have to get stuck on these false binaries like, is this good? Is this true? Is this not true? Just look into it.
It's true.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like, even just like as you kind of explore those topics, other things will happen in your life to confirm them. Other people will come into your life who are also talking about it. You'll see more synchronicities around those things. So when you find something that resonates, you're probably going to start meeting people who talk about it, or watching things where people are bringing it up. And that's kind of like the universe confirming to you, like, it's okay, you could keep going down this path. And at the same time, always connect back to your heart. Do the heart coherence technique by the Heart Math Institute. Seriously, you guys should do it every single day before you do any type of meditation, before you do any type of anything. Because if you're getting connected to your heart and you're syncing your heart and your mind to the same place, you're not going to be deceived by information. Or if you're doing stuff in the astral, if you're doing stuff talking to your guides, if whatever, you're gonna have better discernment when your heart and your mind are linked up. So that's important.
I totally agree. And I just want to tell the chat, you guys have been so awesome. I know, like, I probably missed like literally 95% of the comments, but I'm sure we'll do this again. And I'm just so happy to see so much interaction from you guys. And if you haven't already followed JK Ultra, please go do that. Her series are absolutely incredible. And I'm sure we'll do this again.
Oh yeah, we have to do this again. Thank you, everyone. You guys have been so sweet. Make sure if you're not following Max already, you go and do it. This was great. It's going to be on YouTube. Also, you guys, I just released my shirts, so I'm going to post about that. But go to my page, look at the link. I have some cool, funny shirts that I made. But I'm going to do a little video about that. So,
All right.
check
Talk soon. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.